Hi, welcome back guys. This is your sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Abandoned Naruto Awakens Ragnarok. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze was not the Jinchuriki. He was the reincarnation of the Ragnarok team, specifically Adam, Buddha, Qin Shi Huang, Raiden Tamimin, Kojiro Sasaki, Lu Bu, Nikola Tesla, Jean Mori, and Sun Wukong, with more to be revealed later. He would possess only a partial share of the Nine Tails chakra because Menma and Naruto each held half of the beast, and the third Hokage had died after Naruto rejected the soul. At the Namikaze household, two children trained with their parents in the yard while a younger child watched from a window. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze stood in his room, copying the movements he could see in his mind. This was how he trained indirectly, guided by Adam's divine reflection, the proper Sharingan, the first ability he had unlocked in his longing to improve. Naruto begged with pleading eyes to be allowed to train with the family. Menma told him he did not have the Nine Tails power and said he was weak. Minato agreed that Naruto was weaker than his brother and sister. Naruto screamed an insult and told him to get out. Minato ordered him to come back before dinner because they needed to discuss something important. Naruto nodded outwardly, but inwardly he felt a fragile happiness at the idea of being wanted. He left the house and walked, ignoring glares and dirty looks. He spoke quietly to the idea of slowing down his training so his father would not notice his extraordinary talents. Along the way he heard a group of boys bullying a girl with pale eyes and pale blue-brown hair, calling her a freak. Naruto used a dragon mask to frighten the boys away. He offered his hand to help the girl up. She thanked him shyly and explained that her clan thought she was weak and her father did not speak to her. Naruto said that his family thought he was weak too and suggested they prove their families wrong together. The girl introduced herself as Hinata Hyuga, the heiress of the Hyuga clan, and she admitted that she struggled to meet their expectations. Naruto resolved with a bright smile that they would show their families how strong they were. Hayashi arrived, refusing to approve of Hinata's company with Naruto, and took her away without further words. Naruto watched them leave and continued home, unsurprised by the reception. At dinner the family sat together. Minato called them and explained what had happened on Naruto's birth, the Kyuubi incident, and the background that had shaped their attitudes. Menma spoke angrily, saying Naruto was incapable and that his existence disgusted him. Naruto forced himself to appear hurt and cried quietly to hide his true annoyance. Kushina then spoke of a prophecy. A child of prophecy would face a great danger, and if neglected and hated the child might bring destruction, but if loved and cared for the child would save the world with a guardian known as Ragnarok, a being who would surpass the child. Kushina described the child with images of fiery spirit and speed. Minato said they expected Naruto to meet this Ragnarok guardian eventually, and because of that they would increase his training and send him to the academy alongside his siblings so he could learn to be a ninja. Naruto listened, relieved that he would be allowed to train formally. He resolved to maintain the appearance of weakness for now while he developed his skills slowly. After finishing and washing the dishes he went to his room, fell onto his bed, and slept, processing the flood of information and hoping for change in the future. The next morning Naruto woke, completed his routine, changed into his standard clothing, and waited for his siblings. He wondered how long he would have to wait for the children of the prophecy, expecting them to be ready before him since they wanted to be shinobi so much. He asked his father where Menma and Naruto were. Minato replied that they were still getting ready and that Naruto could go to the academy without them. Naruto declined the offer to leave because he had to wait for his younger siblings. He could not hide his annoyance at how late they were, but he decided to stay so they could walk together and avoid hostile looks from other shinobi and civilians. Menma and Naruto apologized in unison for taking so long. Minato expressed relief and excitement that they could now head to the academy. Naruto, Menma, and Naruto cheered together. Time passed. The students chatted until their instructor, Irika Umino, arrived. Irika had a brown ponytail and a scar across the upper part of his nose. He used a stern expression to quiet the class. Irika introduced himself and explained that, since it was everyone's first day, they would take turns introducing themselves before beginning classwork. All 13 children from the Leaf Village who would become known as the Konoha 13 were in the same class for the purposes of the plot. After school, Naruto kept to himself because no one wanted to start a conversation with him. He focused on notes about how to integrate chakra into a hand-to-hand technique to amplify its power. Hinata and his siblings noticed his solitude and invited him to join their group. The Konoha Menma introduced Naruto as his older brother, and Naruto greeted the group with some nervousness. Everyone returned the greetings until Rock Lee asked what Naruto had been writing. Naruto explained that he was designing a hand-to-hand martial technique but had only completed one move so far. Lee asked to see it, and Naruto instructed him to try to block, which Lee did. Everyone watching was surprised and impressed. The move functioned as a guard breaker that allowed a follow-up attack without leaving the user vulnerable. Lee was excited to learn it, and Naruto told him he would teach it after he finished refining the technique. Sakura asked how it worked, and Naruto gave the move its tentative name, Renewal Hand-to-Hand Technique Hook. The name sounded odd to some, but Naruto smiled and downplayed it. Naruto sensed that others were probing for more than the technique. He worried they might suspect he had stolen the forbidden technique scroll earlier, even though he had returned it after a few hours. He decided to avoid revealing anything about his bloodline limit and to stick to talking about the technique, using the group's interest as a safe topic. Over time, the group seemed to warm to him and they began getting along, though Naruto remained cautious because his ability to perceive feelings made him wary of real curiosity. When parents arrived to pick up their children, many gave Naruto cold looks. He tried to ignore them. Back at home, Kushina asked how the academy had been. Naruto announced that Naruto had been developing his own hand-to-hand technique, which surprised Minato and Kushina. Minato asked to see Naruto's progress, and Naruto agreed to demonstrate it at home. They returned home to practice and to discuss what everyone had learned at school. Later, Naruto sat in a forest as if meditating. Beneath the surface, he entered a dreamlike training space where 13 figures waited. Lu remarked that Naruto had taken his time arriving, and Naruto apologized, explaining that it had been difficult to evade the special operative unit and make it there on time. Buddha produced the Staff of the Six Realms, which manifested for both Buddha and Naruto. They prepared to train in a stylized, fast-paced sparring exercise inspired by the Volundar combat style and charged at one another in an energetic, anime-like display of motion and technique. Time passed. Naruto gradually became more comfortable with the Konoha. The group stopped acting like he was a special assignment from the fourth village leader and began treating him as a friend. A flashback revealed why the others had initially been so reserved. The fourth village leader had assigned a delicate mission. Earlier that day, someone had bypassed the seals on the forbidden technique scrolls and learned the techniques, though the scroll had been returned before anyone arrived. The leader suspected a connection to Naruto and instructed the squad to befriend him and discover what he might be hiding and who was responsible for the breach. Unbeknownst to the leader, a voice recording seal under the leader's desk had recorded the instructions, confirming the leader's plan. The day of the academy's final examinations arrived. Irika told the students this was their last day and urged them to do their best. The tests began, including the shuriken and kunai throwing exam. Each student demonstrated competence. Many of them achieved high hit counts. Naruto and most of his classmates succeeded, and the instructors declared that they had passed and were ready to become apprentice ninjas. Some time later, the ceremony announcing placements took place. Naruto and 2 others were assigned to Team 7, which would include Naruto Namikaze, Menma Namikaze, Naruko Namikaze, Sasuke Uchiha, and Sakura Haruno. Their instructors would be Kakashi Hatake and Kushina Namikaze. Team 8 consisted of Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akimichi, and Ino Yamanaka with instructor Asuma Sarutobi. Team 9 remained unformed because they had effectively skipped a grade. Team 10 was composed of Kiba Inazuka, Hinata Hyuga, and Shino Aburame with instructor Kurinai Yuhi. Irika offered encouragement and reminded the students that this was the start of their lives as shinobi and that their instructors would pick them up shortly. One by one the instructors arrived to gather their teams, and only Team 7 remained waiting. Menma, irritated, demanded to know where their mother and Kakashi were. Naruto smiled and told Menma to be patient, calling him by a teasing little brother nickname that made Menma blush. Their instructors arrived soon after, and the new teams prepared to begin their next chapter as apprentice shinobi. Menma stammered and tried to tell them to be quiet, cheeks flushed at the nickname. Naruto and Naruto could barely contain their laughter at the future Hokage's embarrassment, but their senseis arrived before the laughter broke free. Kushina pulled on Kakashi's ear because he had been reading a private novel in public. Naruto used ninja wire to snatch the book and destroyed it, and Kakashi sulked about the loss. Kushina asked Naruto to meet them on the roof. Kakashi and Naruto immediately teleported to the roof, which surprised the others. Kakashi asked when Naruto had learned that technique, and Naruto said he had asked Shisui to teach him a few months ago, though he privately thought that he had only figured out the mechanics quickly and used the story as an excuse. Kakashi took out another romance novel and watched Naruto carefully. The rest of the team arrived and were surprised that Naruto had been first to the roof, but Kakashi told them to introduce themselves. Naruto introduced himself as a 14-year-old who loved his family, sweets, cooking and training, and who disliked Kumo, abusers, idiots, and traitors. He loudly declared a dramatic goal to become stronger than Madara and all the Hokages combined, while inwardly admitting that his real dream was to build a family and live peacefully. Menma introduced himself as someone who liked ramen, training and family, disliked waiting for ramen and traitors, and hoped to become Hokage. Naruto introduced herself as someone who liked training, reading, family, and ramen, and who did not like waiting for ramen or traitors. Sakura introduced herself, looking at Sasuke and admitting she admired him, then said she wanted to become a strong and powerful female ninja. Kushina introduced herself as someone who loved her children, her husband, ramen and missions, and who disliked Kakashi's tardiness and books. Her goal was to see her children become strong warriors. Kakashi gave a curt, half-smile and declined to share anything personal. The team noted that they had learned only his name. Kushina announced that the bell test would be held the next day and warned the young ninjas not to overeat before the trial, or they might become sick. After the adults left, Naruto told the others to eat and argued that maintaining strength was better than starving, explaining that they would be weaker if they were hungry. Sakura wondered if Naruto had stolen the forbidden scroll to make himself stronger, since possession of such a scroll would likely increase his power dramatically. Menma suggested they wait for the next day's team exercise to see what Naruto was really capable of, and the others nodded before going their separate ways. Naruto reflected with irritation that some still suspected him of taking the scroll, even after demonstrating his hand-to-hand combat skills. He created an afterimage technique using chakra to return to his original position and began practicing basic hand-to-hand moves he had picked up from various styles and written down. He mentally complained that the Hokage had assigned special forces to watch him and thought that even if he could enter his inner world to train, no one would notice. He then went to a nearby study to meet Nicola for more training theories. The next day, the new Team 7 arrived for the bell test, having eaten breakfast except for Naruto, who was nursing a sore leg and muttering that the trainer had kicked too hard during their earlier session. He remembered a harsh training exercise in which an instructor activated a copying technique to test his reactions. The instructor had explained that the eyes served to copy and the body had to dodge. He increased the speed from a single quick jab to many faster strikes, emphasizing skill and timing. The technique had come in waves that pushed Naruto to his limits. When the instructor unleashed a powerful move called the Divine Axe, it hit Naruto's leg and forced him to the ground in pain. The instructor congratulated him on his improvement and suggested he return home to recover, leaving Naruto glaring. Back in the present, Kushina reiterated the rules for the bell test. The team had to take one of the 4 bells, and anyone without a bell would have to return to the academy. The students scattered to prepare, leaving Naruto stretching and creating afterimages as he began circling Kakashi with quick movements. Kakashi and Kushina watched in shock, impressed by how fast Naruto had become at such a young age. The genin grew jealous of how effective and fast Naruto had become. Suddenly Naruto unleashed his Taekwondo third stance. The single attack froze everyone and would have knocked Kakashi out if he had not substituted himself with a log, leaving Kakashi sweating and breathing unevenly. Kakashi thought the move had been an omnidirectional strike that would have been a sure winning blow had it connected. Naruto stopped abruptly, clutching his leg from the recoil. His less flexible body had strained under the motion and he fell. Kakashi asked if Naruto was all right, concerned. Naruto explained that the technique was still a work in progress and that the recoil still hurt. Naruto decided to sit out to avoid worsening the injury, and their sensei nodded and began bandaging Naruto's ankle. The real reason for the lingering pain was the divine axe he had received from Adam a month ago, which still caused discomfort. With Kakashi more tired, the genin planned to team up on him. Menma called on wind style and executed a wind bullet, while Sasuke followed with a fireball technique. Their combined effort produced a stronger fireball, and Naruto and Sakura ambushed Kakashi with multiple kunai from different directions. Kakashi found their teamwork impressive despite some sloppiness. They had worked together effectively. After the test, they sat together with Naruto's ankle bandaged and praised their combination attack, naming it Burning Kunai Storm. The sensei arrived looking serious. Kushina announced that the team had passed, which shocked everyone except Naruto. Naruto explained that he had expected such results and had reasoned the day before that it was almost impossible for a genin to defeat a jonin outright. He admitted that he had almost beaten Kakashi by surprise and had intended to move around him rather than rely on a direct assault. Naruto excitedly described the sequence as a whoosh, a quick movement, then an explosive finish, nearly overwhelming Naruto with her enthusiasm until he cut her off to explain. Naruto described Taekwondo third stance as an omnidirectional sequence, striking one side of an opponent's head, following with a kick to the opposite side, and finishing with a final strike to the back of the head. Sasuke asked why Naruto was hurt after using it. Naruto explained that to make the technique effective one had to be extremely flexible. The strain on his own body had caused the recoil. Everyone instinctively touched their backs at the thought of such flexibility. Kushina congratulated the students and said they could go home. She told Naruto that she would report to the Lord Hokage and left him in charge while she and the others were away. Menma and Naruto complained that they were old enough to take care of themselves, and the group left for the Hokage Tower. At the Hokage Tower, Kakashi reported that in terms of teamwork all four of the genin were very skilled. When asked about Naruto, Kakashi clarified that Naruto was included and was, by far, the strongest among the five. This surprised many who had expected Sasuke or his siblings to be stronger. Kakashi elaborated that Naruto possessed near Jonin-level speed and had the terrifying capability to nearly defeat an opponent with a single, well-placed technique. Minato advised keeping an eye on Naruto, as he might have more techniques yet to reveal. Minato admitted he hoped Naruto would not teach his siblings this power impulsively, even as Kushina laughed and said Naruto tended to remain humble. Minato finished his preparations and left for home, asking Kushina to watch the children. Later, Naruto meditated at his usual spot and sensed a strong presence in the outskirts of the daimyo's capital. He left an apparition to travel there and found a red-haired teen a few years older than him preparing an attack on the capital. Before the attacker could cast his spell, he was struck by a single punch so powerful it sent him flying beyond the city limits. The attacker, stunned and breathing heavily, compared the blow to being struck by a mountain as his injuries began to heal. Naruto approached cautiously, recognizing the aura of a fellow Uzumaki and confident in the control afforded by his empowerment gloves. The red-haired teen warned Naruto that he would ensure a peaceful death, then threw a glowing green stone at incredible speed. The stone passed through the target and the teen sank into the ground, disappearing. Naruto unsummoned his gloves and returned home, puzzled but unable to dwell on the encounter for long. A short time later the teams prepared for a mission to catch Tora, the troublesome cat, while Naruto made deliveries around Konoha. The cat leaped onto a pile of debris and escaped, leaving the four genin frustrated. Menma muttered about how close they had been. Naruto called out to them with a tone of mild sarcasm, and Menma began to complain about his older brother before Naruto interrupted him to scold him for his language. Naruto pointed out that if their teammates had helped more they might have caught the cat. Naruto pretended to whistle and promised the cat would be back shortly. Naruto asked if he truly thought that would work. Sasuke made a sarcastic remark, but Naruto fell silent when a cat jumped into his arms, purring and rubbing against him. Naruto laughed and asked what Sasuke had been saying, and Kakashi told the pair to head to the Hokage. At the Hokage Tower, Minato asked Naruto if he had completed all his missions. Naruto reported that he had finished 10 D-rank missions at once, bringing his total to 41. Minato said that, since he had met the requirement, they would assign a C-rank mission and invited them in. Tazuna, the bridge builder, complained to a nearby drunk man that the only competent bodyguard he seemed stuck with was the tall blonde boy, gesturing toward Naruto. Minato reassured him that the team was suitable for the task. Naruko accepted a cup of sake. Naruto playfully tapped her on the head, then surprised everyone by speaking in formal terms to apologize to Tazuna and explain that they needed time to prepare. His formal tone startled the group. He had learned that manner of speech when he was an heir but had abandoned it after his training. Kakashi told them to get ready for the mission as Naruto hurried off. Kakashi reflected that the Rinnegan individual he had sensed earlier deserved further investigation and felt annoyed at how easily unidentified people moved through their midst. At the Konoha gates, the new genin described the supplies they had brought. Naruto carried throwing knives, throwing stars, pre-cooked food, water, a map, and sealed tents. Menma brought throwing knives, throwing stars, armor, a large supply of ramen, and his father's long throwing knife, which Kushina put away. Naruko had throwing knives, throwing stars, ramen, and extra clothes. Sasuke had throwing knives, throwing stars, and tags. Sakura carried rope, throwing knives, throwing stars, tags, several changes of clothes, and makeup. Naruto noticed they had all forgotten storage scrolls and supplied extras for everyone so they could seal their items away. They set out. While they walked, Naruto and the teachers saw through an illusion and remained on guard. Naruto produced some explosive tagged throwing stars disguised as candy and pretended to drop them. Only the teachers recognized the trick and paused to help him gather the items. Suddenly, 2 masked attackers leapt from hiding and launched a sudden ambush. The disguised explosives detonated, briefly obscuring vision, and a powerful fireball technique rang out. Naruto, Menma, and Sasuke launched 3 coordinated fireballs while Naruto and Sakura tossed explosive throwing knives to disrupt the attackers. The large explosions startled the teachers and Tazuna. When the smoke cleared, the teachers revealed themselves and praised the genin for their effective teamwork. Kakashi explained that the attackers were the Demon Brothers, which suggested that Zabuza might be involved. Tazuna described the threats facing his village and begged for help. Naruto insisted on assisting, bowing and stating that they could punish him later if necessary. He also prepared a clone to go ahead if the teachers refused. Sasuke, not wanting Naruto to take the spotlight alone, volunteered to join as well. The group agreed to help, and Kushina stipulated that Naruto would need to complete 20 additional D-rank missions afterward. Naruto accepted this and they left for the wave. As they walked, Naruto explained why a small village like the wave had so few ninja. At the dock, the boatman greeted Tazuna with relief at the arrival of reinforcements and the group boarded. The boatman rowed faster, hopeful that the travelers might bring salvation. Naruto warned that the fog felt unnatural and urged everyone to stay alert. He tossed a throwing knife, which Kakashi retrieved to find it had landed near a small rabbit. Naruto reassured the others that the rabbit posed no danger, but Kakashi suspected a substitution technique and suspected a member of the Mist Covert unit was nearby. A large blade then came whistling through the air. Naruto, Kakashi, and Kushina shouted for everyone to drop as the weapon traced a deadly arc. Naruto angled his throwing knife to meet the blade and redirected its momentum, forcing the attacker to catch their own weapon and reveal himself. The attacker stepped forward as Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the mist. He noted their unexpected skill at deflecting his blade and adopted a cold, intense demeanor. Kushina and Kakashi assumed battle stances, ready to respond. Kakashi asked Zabuza what he wanted. Zabuza demanded that Tazuna be handed over and threatened consequences otherwise. No one agreed, and the confrontation escalated into battle. Naruto waited for the right opening to join. He reminded himself to strike at the precise moment. As Kakashi began preparing a technique, Naruto seized the opportunity and threw a custom-made explosive throwing knife. Zabuza dismissed the weapon as inadequate. The kunai Naruto caught exploded with several powerful tags, injuring his hand badly enough that he could no longer use it. Before their opponents could take advantage, Senbon planted at the base of his neck caused him to collapse like a puppet whose strings had been cut. A stranger thanked the team for weakening Naruto, claimed to have been after him for weeks, announced that he would take care of him, and then vanished. Naruto fell to the ground, followed by Kakashi and Kushina, exhausted from the battle. Tazuna was asked for a place to rest. Naruto picked up Kakashi with Menma and helped Kushina up. Tazuna offered his house nearby and they followed. The next day, Team 7 practiced tree walking while Naruto meditated for mental training. In the middle of his meditation, Naruto snapped out of a disturbing vision. Minato declared that Naruto would be sent to death for bringing harm to the village, and Naruto woke in a cold sweat at noon, horrified by the possibility that he had seen his fate. He resolved that if the village would not accept him, he would have to plan something drastic to control the narrative of his future. He began preparing a technique that would let a clone be killed, while preserving a way for him to leave later. He returned inside and announced to Kushina that he wanted some late training. She agreed, and he said goodnight before setting seals to craft a believable duplicate of himself. He worked until he fell asleep. Later that night, Naruto awoke to find a young woman nearby gathering herbs. She apologized for the intrusion. Naruto introduced himself and learned that she was Haku, who had come to collect herbs to help someone important to her. He offered to help and explained, quietly and with some embarrassment, that he was preparing a jutsu to fake his death. Haku was surprised and concerned, and he promised to keep their conversation private. She then shared her own story, and they spoke until she gathered her basket and left to continue her tasks. They parted with a tentative understanding and a promise to do their best when they next faced each other. Later, preparing for a difficult encounter, Naruto activated a protective technique and placed a concealing jutsu over his eyes to hide his expression. He moved downstairs and found a scene on the road. A small group of bandits threatened some travelers, including Tsunami. The bandits had pressed the women, and Naruto reacted swiftly. He summoned his staff and transformed it into sword form, using a precise, decisive strike to incapacitate the attackers without graphic harm. He then checked on Tsunami. She was shaken but unharmed and grateful for his intervention. Naruto ensured the weapon would remain a secret between them, then headed toward the bridge where the main confrontation would occur. At the bridge, Haku raced forward to protect Zabuza from Kakashi's lightning technique. Naruto used a substitution technique, swapping places with one of his prepared clones, and stepped into the path of the attack, taking the blow with his bare hand but remaining standing. He admonished that no attack should be aimed at someone with a life ahead of them. Naruto then identified the true threat, Gato and his hired mercenaries, who had come from the mist to exploit the village. Gato ordered his men to attack and to leave the villagers vulnerable. Naruto and his clones responded immediately. Multiple clones unleashed coordinated fire-style jutsu that overwhelmed many of the mercenaries, and Naruto, Kushina, Kakashi, Zabuza, and Haku moved in to subdue the rest. The fighting was fierce but presented in rapid, anime-style action without gruesome detail. In the end, the attackers were defeated and restrained. Kushina approached Naruto afterward, concerned about the intensity of the confrontation. The clone explained that protecting others sometimes required hard choices and that he was prepared to do what was necessary to defend his comrades. He felt some guilt at the violence but accepted it as a part of growing responsibility. Gato, captured and desperate, begged for mercy and offered money and land. Naruto forced Gato to sign papers transferring his holdings to the villagers as reparation for the harm he had intended. The documents ensured the village could rebuild and recover. With the immediate threat resolved, the team tended to the wounded, and the villagers began the slow work of restoring their community. The enemy was defeated and the threat ended. He handed over a large bag, explaining that it contained 1 billion ryo and asked that the recipient put the village on the map. He then gave a smaller bag and explained that it contained 500 million ryo as payment for the effort. He performed a sage technique to bless the land. Seeds sprouted, trees grew and bore fruit, and vegetables pushed up from the soil. Kakashi was astonished and noted that only Lord Hashirama had ever produced wood-like effects in the past. The man explained that not being a ninja did not prevent him from using ninjutsu, then vanished. Naruto felt a rush of relief as he deactivated the genjutsu and the eighth consciousness switched places with his clone. Menma called for celebration, and they spent the night at Tazuna's place in high spirits. Later, Naruto sat on a bench near the village outskirts with a bottle of juice. Haku appeared behind him and asked whether the mysterious man who had saved them was related to Naruto. Naruto smiled and said he was impressed that Haku had seen through him. He explained that he could not stand by and watch her risk herself for her father. Haku blushed and sat beside him. Haku wondered if they could be together like that all the time. Naruto teased that he already knew she cared for him. They shared a quiet, friendly moment together. They returned home, and Naruto said she never thought she would be happy to take on D-rank missions again as they agreed to help Naruto with the work when they reached the Hokage Tower. Minato was surprised to learn that the mission had been upgraded to S-rank and asked how Naruto was feeling. Naruto said he was fine. Minato explained that because the change in rank had not been communicated, Naruto would be assigned 20 unpaid D-rank missions as a lesson. Naruto nodded and accepted the decision. He took the scrolls and left. As he departed, Naruto created a clone to take his place and teleported toward the hidden mist village. He used his chakra to locate the rebel leader and appeared in her camp, startling her and causing her to take a defensive stance. He introduced himself in a boastful manner and said he had come to deal with the tailed beast. The rebel leader, known as Buddha, was skeptical. Zabuza entered and vouched that the newcomer had helped them, noting that his power seemed comparable to a tailed beast's. Buddha declared that she wanted a real fight, and if she won, she would gain a permit to come and go from the village freely. Naruto agreed to the terms and teleported toward the Mizukage Tower. The rebel leader worried that the newcomer was unpredictable and prayed for the village's safety. In the Mizukage Tower confrontation, Naruto removed an illusion and confronted the leader who accused him of killing Haku's parents. Naruto found the idea that the Hokage's son would challenge him for the sake of a girl amusing. He explained that he refused to be treated as a weapon, something the leader could understand given past treatment. The leader unleashed a powerful wind-style attack, a fierce technique that struck Naruto and sent him reeling as if he had been pierced by a forceful blow. Naruto prioritized saving lives, canceled the controlling genjutsu that had manipulated the leader, and released the captive's will. He then used sage healing techniques to mend the injuries he had caused. While the leader was unconscious, Naruto erased their recent conversation from the leader's memory and resumed his disguised form. Naruto returned to Mei, who demanded to be warned before such appearances. He presented Yagura as a captured prize, explaining that the puppet seemed to be testing targets with a strange technique, likely as a trial run. Mei was stunned to learn the puppet bore unusual abilities. When Mei asked who would take over leadership of Kirigakure, Naruto suggested she was the right choice because she had rallied the people. Mei thanked him, declined to grant the permit yet, but promised to make it a priority. Naruto then teleported to where Haku was waiting. Haku ran to him and they embraced in joyful reunion as he lifted her and spun her around. She asked what he was doing there. Naruto explained he had come to see her and to handle the trouble that had haunted her younger days. Haku was glad he had come. They spent a short, peaceful time together on a bench before Naruto reminded her he could not stay long because his clone would eventually disperse when it ran out of chakra. They parted with warm goodbyes and returned to their duties. They stayed like that for an hour. He said he had to go and that, because of the Chunin exam finals in a month, he would visit every week or so. Then he left and teleported back to Konoha. He thought at Sekigahara while facing Kabuto, a former student of Orochimaru. Kabuto accused him of getting on his nerves, rushed forward, and struck Naruto with a heavy blow that staggered him and sent him colliding into Sasuke. Naruto shook his head. It hurt, and he asked if they were all right as he swayed a little. Sakura said they were fine but that they needed to get Sasuke to the hospital, and she tried to help. Naruto noted they had the Earth and Heaven scrolls and that they should get to the gate and take Sasuke to the hospital. They nodded, and Naruto picked up Sasuke since he was the strongest. He told them to go, and they leapt from tree to tree until they reached the venue. There they informed the Jonin and higher-ups about Kabuto, and countermeasures were put in place. A Jonin announced that the preliminary exam would begin in 2 days and told everyone to rest. They nodded and left to begin training. Naruto investigated Kabuto and managed to find only a few hints about a secret organization called Akatsuki. If the group was not well known, it could mean they were weak or that trouble was brewing. After teleporting away, someone considered that although they had been found out, there was no immediate need for panic, that discovery might even be their downfall. His colorless eyes shifted and became a 3-tomo Sharingan. The announcer welcomed everyone and explained that, because of the large number of participants, the field would be cut in half for the preliminaries. The crowd nodded in agreement. Heiei called for Naruto Uzukais and Naruko Uzukais to enter the field, and they stepped forward. Naruko urged her older brother not to hold back, and he replied that he did not plan to lose. The match began. He executed a technique called Taekwondo Dragon Storm and took her out of the tornado. Kiba shouted in disbelief that the attack had appeared so suddenly, and Niji acknowledged that the user was in a league of his own, uncertain he could block such power. The preliminaries ended with the finalists Naruto Uzukais, Menma Uzukais, Niji Hyuga, Sabaku no Gaara, Sabaku no Temari, Shikamaru Nara, and Sasuke Uchiha. Minato Uzukais informed them they would be in the finals in a month, and they all nodded. Naruto decided to train with Might Guy, a taijutsu specialist. Might Guy asked if Naruto wanted training. Naruto said that although his techniques were strong, his body did not produce the power he wanted. He wanted to kick with enough force to break concrete. Guy agreed but insisted Naruto wear his signature jumpsuit for the full training. Naruto paled at the thought but reluctantly agreed. He donned the jumpsuit, strapped on weights, and ran 5 laps around Konoha. He covered his hair and wore a mask to avoid being seen. After grueling training and 3 hours of running, Guy instructed Naruto to kick a large tree with as much force as possible. Naruto's kick cracked a chunk from the very thick trunk. Guy explained he should time his chakra release to the moment before impact to increase damage. On the next attempt, Naruto split a stronger tree in half. Guy was impressed, noting Naruto had reached the goal and could now break concrete. Naruto replied that he wanted to continue, to learn the afterimage technique and other taijutsu forms, and to develop dodging and defense. He also vowed to burn the jumpsuit afterward, which made Guy laugh, and Guy insisted they continue training. A month passed. Naruto went on occasional outings with Haku while still training and had received permission to enter Kiri freely. He woke with a sense that something bad was about to happen, glanced at a family portrait, and felt hopeful that the village might finally accept him. That hope would be tested. A public gathering took place. Minato Uzukais, identified as the 4th Hokage, welcomed the people and introduced visiting leaders, the Kazekage of Sunagakure and the Otokage, who had come to promote themselves and demonstrate their strength. Minato called Naruto Uzukais and Sabaku no Gaara to enter the grounds. Naruto removed the training weights, which thudded to the ground, and Gaara prepared by focusing his sand. Genma acted as proctor and asked if both were ready. They nodded, and the match began. Naruto produced over 50 afterimages, shocking onlookers and stirring anxious murmurs among those who feared the beast within him. Some conceded that he was increasingly formidable. Genma observed that Naruto could have used speed to finish the match sooner. Gaara responded by launching sand spikes, and his mutated arms slammed the ground. Naruto was forced to jump to avoid being struck, then deactivated his heightened state. He noted inwardly that the change did not alter his eye color, only a subtle pattern, so it remained difficult for others to detect. Naruto then reappeared directly in front of Gaara, struck with his knee, and spun in the air to create a small tornado using a technique he called Taekwondo Cyclone. Gaara was left barely conscious. Observers remarked that the cyclone was a powerful attack and that Gaara had been forced into a defensive position, but Gaara then used sand to restrain Naruto. The sand trap signaled the beginning of the invasion. The invasion proceeded along familiar lines. Menma faced Gaara while other fights unfolded. Kabuto ended up confronting Menma in the chaos. Naruto searched for Kabuto and found him. Kabuto smirked and summoned a 1.5-meter katana, taunting Naruto while clearly intending harm. In the ensuing fight, Kabuto teleported toward Hinata as she was falling from a nearby skirmish. Naruto reached her first and caught her before she hit the ground. Niji reacted with outrage and struck Kabuto, accusing him of trying to endanger Hinata. The situation intensified as the battle continued. They had framed him, and he cursed himself for falling for their trap as everyone closed in, glaring. His family and friends watched with faces full of shock and disappointment. Naruto knew that fighting back openly would only make him look guilty, so he stayed silent and let them take him. A mysterious black and white man reappeared from the tree and announced that Naruto could not be freed. The man declared that Naruto would be used as a noble sacrifice to help start an invasion. Naruto broke down in tears and asked how anyone could do something so cruel. Menma and his parents looked on, pained and bewildered. Minato, stunned and searching for where he had gone wrong, ordered Naruto captured and put on trial for the grave violations alleged against him. Naruto was restrained with movement-sealing cuffs designed to prevent the use of hand signs, and he was escorted to a cell where seals kept him tightly bound. Knowing how long trials could take, Naruto quietly sent a pulse of chakra through the ground to reach Haku at incredible speed. He conveyed that he had been framed by the Akatsuki, that he could not leave without being presumed guilty, and that they would be together someday. He told Haku that he loved her and to stay safe. Only she felt the message, and though saddened, she hoped he would survive. Soon the cell gates opened and Hayashi entered. Seeing Naruto, Hayashi struck him and then fell into a furious rant, accusing him of betraying Hinata and insulting his character. Naruto was overwhelmed by the beating. His chakra had been sealed down so severely that he was reduced to the level of a low chunin. Hayashi announced that he would take grim satisfaction in the man's downfall. Naruto felt hatred welling up for Konoha and for the world of shinobi, feelings that had arisen before but were now blazing anew. NBU operatives then took Naruto in for interrogation. He endured harsh and brutal treatment meant to break him. He was restrained, beaten, and pushed to confess. They demanded that he tell the truth about what had happened to Hinata. He continued to insist that he had not done what they accused him of. After a week of this, the ANBU healed him enough to stand and speak and applied bandages and an illusion to hide evidence of the interrogation. The trial of Naruto Uzuke's disowned from his clans began. Minato presided, and the courtroom erupted with shouts accusing Naruto of the alleged crime and of compromising the village. ANBU presented a recording showing a deal with Zetsu, an accomplice in an organization seeking the tailed beasts. The footage suggested that promises of restored titles and power had been offered in exchange for cooperation in a larger plot to destabilize Konoha. In the video, a man posing as Naruto appeared to accept the plan to draw the power of another's tailed beast and use the chaos to snatch several targets and ultimately threaten the Hokage. The evidence shocked everyone and pushed the crowd to demand execution. Minato, Kushina stunned and silent, pronounced that Naruto would be executed. After a whispered consultation, the Hokage deferred the execution for 2 months because of the village's fragile stability and ordered that Naruto be sent to the prison of last resort where dangerous criminals were kept for years at a time. Blazing chains of chakra enveloped Naruto, and he screamed as he was taken away. Those present felt the impact of his anguish. Minato tried to hold back tears as he returned to his paperwork at home. 2 months passed. Naruto thought about his birthday and how time had marked him differently now. He spent the days in darkness, repeatedly assailed by spectral oni and other prison torments that tested his limits. They attacked him to weaken him, never pressing so far as to end him, because they wanted him alive for the trial and execution that would come. He fought back when he could, sampling his strength against them in terse, desperate clashes. When the time came, light opened and Naruto was brought up into a bleak execution arena called the End. The tribunal announced the sentence. Naruto Uzuke's, disowned by both clans, was to die in a harsh execution reserved for traitors. He gave a small, defiant smile and spoke a single ominous word, declaring that a reckoning was coming. Then he used his time-stopping technique to switch places with a clone that had been made to mirror his injuries, restoring the seals and leaving the real Naruto free to act once the moment passed. Time seemed to restart as Naruto appeared to fall in a staged, brutal scene that the crowd cheered over, everyone except the Leaf Village 13, his former parents, clan heads, and a few children. Above a cloud, Naruto watched the spectacle. His hair grew and shifted color, his wounds closed, and the whisker-like marks on his cheeks faded until he resembled a young, serene figure. He announced inwardly that he was leaving this life and that the public execution would be the end of that chapter. His eyes changed, taking on a striking pattern of crimson with flecks of gold eyes whispered about as the true eyes of Ragnarok, and he rose up to fly toward Haku. Haku sat on a bench waiting for him, haunted by the pain she had seen in her dreams and by what she had witnessed. That anguish had nearly driven her to seek retribution against the Leaf Village, but Naruto had persuaded her not to act on it. When he arrived, she stood with her hair partially shadowing her face and gathered him into an embrace as she wept. She cried about the injustice she had perceived, questioning why proper care and investigation had not been done. Naruto lifted her chin and told her that he was through with the village, with being a shinobi, and with that life. Haku responded that she would give up being a shinobi as well, which surprised him. She then confessed her love for him, and they shared a quiet, tender embrace instead of anything more intense. News of Naruto's supposed execution spread quickly and his name was tarnished across the lands. The water leader permitted Haku to resign, allowing her to claim that she was tired of taking lives and wanted to leave the service to be with Naruto. Haku was introduced to Mei and Zabuza, who saw that Naruto cared for her sincerely and not for status. He even gave them his address so they could visit, and after tasting his remarkable cooking they welcomed the idea of him coming by any time. The Leaf Village celebrated his reported death, a fact Naruto observed with indifference from his new life. Menma found himself alone with memories of Naruto, and asked himself why things had turned out as they did. Jiraiya arrived to tell Menma that he would train him. Menma drifted to sleep haunted by the question of Naruto's true identity and legacy. In an unknown facility, a man asked whether the body had been secured. Zestu confirmed and the man touched the body, feeling a rush of power as his own body and gaze changed. The growth of his power was sudden and exponential, comparable to the force of five-tailed beasts. He laughed at the thought that this power came from a clone and spoke of obtaining the orbs, dismissing tailed beasts as imitations and vowing that the 10 tails would be reborn and Ragnarok would begin. He then moved on to begin experiments with manic enthusiasm. 5 years later, Menma, Sasuke, and Naruto arrived at the Leaf Village gate accompanied by the legendary 3 who had trained them. Sakura had trained under Tsunade, and she and her peers had pushed each other hard during their lessons. Sakura climbed a training pole and announced their return with youthful exuberance, while Sasuke teased her and she pouted like a close friend rather than a romantic partner. Orochimaru reminded them to behave and they all agreed, proceeding toward the Leaf Leader's office. They entered the office to find paperwork finally completed, an unusual sight that made everyone smile. Jiraiya observed their progress with pride, noting how much they had strengthened under training. The conversation touched on the growth of the young shinobi, but Naruto's name was only brought up to be criticized. There were rumors that his body had been stolen, but most assumed he had died and that thieves had been involved. Unknown to them, Naruto had survived and was living far from the village. Naruto Ryujin had rebuilt his life. He had married Haku and they had triplets named Hitsuguya, Mikasa, and Raiden. Only Zabuza knew about Naruto's previous life, and that knowledge had been shared before Naruto proposed. In a flashback, Naruto and Zabuza sat together in a bar as Naruto revealed his past. Zabuza watched Naruto's eyes change as memories of childhood training, hardship, and painful conversations poured out. Zabuza asked why Naruto had not sought revenge, since the cruelty he had suffered would have justified endless retaliation. Naruto explained that revenge offered only a hollow, fleeting satisfaction and that he preferred to spend his time on things that brought value rather than on hatred. Zabuza reflected that the young man seemed unexpectedly wise for his years. A man praised the groom and told his daughter that he had chosen well and that the man was a keeper. The man added that the couple had his blessings. The groom, confused, said he had only planned to share a drink and a conversation and had not expected to ask for blessings. He also said he would marry her regardless. Zabuza laughed, the others laughed with him, and the rest became history. The flashback ended. Naruto awoke in a king-size bed and looked at Haku as she slept. He nudged her gently and asked what she wanted for breakfast. Haku replied that she would like something with apples. Naruto smiled and pressed a tender forehead touch to her before going downstairs to begin cooking. As he left, Haku recalled the past 5 years and the peaceful life they had built together with their 3 children. She rose to check on the kids and went downstairs to find him at the stove. Deep inside a cave, one of the group asked why the Kage's children had returned with the Uchiha and why they had not been attacked. A masked leader explained that they had to wait for a certain man. When another questioned why they would not simply attack and take his family instead, the leader warned that the man, Ryujin, had teleportation marks near the Leaf Village and would come to retaliate the moment anyone stirred trouble there. A man with a scythe suggested targeting the man's wife or children, but the leader dismissed the idea as foolish. He explained that Ryujin had trained his wife to such an extreme that she could freeze an entire village almost instantly. One of the younger members misunderstood the term and was corrected. Absolute zero, meaning temperatures so low it could immobilize an opponent. The leader clarified that while the couple was off the table for a direct strike, the Leaf Village itself could be attacked if they used Pain as their instrument. Pain was ordered to move out immediately. A woman asked whether the attackers were strong enough to defeat Pain. The leader said they were not. He continued that even if they failed, they could take an orb, or if Ryujin came and was killed, they would disrupt his peaceful life. He laughed and mentioned a weapon they wanted to seize as well. Chapter end. Today was the Memorial Day when the village paid homage to those who had died in service. Menma ran across rooftops with a large box, anxious about the long line and worried he might be late. He checked the sun and quickened his pace. As he leapt from roof to roof, he felt an enormous burst of chakra. He was blasted backward and grabbed a ledge to keep from being torn away. The force and power surprised him. He had never felt anything like it. Inside Menma's mind, Kurama sensed the chakra and recognized a familiarity, thinking it resembled that of the Sage of 6 Paths. Kurama prepared to lend Menma chakra in case he could not handle what was coming. On the plaza, Minato addressed the people of the Leaf Village, asking them to remember those who had died in service and requesting a moment of silence for all who had been caught in battle. As the village bowed their heads, Minato's attention snapped upward. He shouted for everyone to get down and braced himself against a powerful push that rocked the village. A quarter of the Leaf Village was reduced to rubble by the unknown force. Minato immediately ordered the injured to be taken to hospitals and instructed capable shinobi to identify the attackers while warning those below Jonin rank not to engage. He then teleported toward the Kage platform and was confronted by a masked assailant who restrained him with chains and announced that he had long wanted to battle Minato. Menma rose and surveyed the destruction around him. Pain advanced, mocking Menma for being related to the other man, but Menma shouted that he was no longer connected to his brother and rejected the association. Pain clarified that he had not been referring to that brother, then unleashed a powerful universal pull that yanked Menma toward him and slammed him into the ground. Pain prepared to strike with chakra rods, intending lethal force, when a Chidori attack flashed toward him from an Uchiha ally. The Chidori forced Pain to evade the strike. Pain taunted the arriving Uchiha and their friends, remarking on their ignorance of the true man they had come for and using another massive push to send many combatants stumbling back. Only Naruto and Menma remained close enough to continue the fight. Pain mocked them as he faced down the duo. In response, they transformed and tapped a deep reserve of power, manifesting a 3-tailed form between them. Naruto emphatically denied that they were failures. Pain challenged them to prove it, and the 3-tailed fighters clashed with him. Menma felt another presence. He recognized that the chakra was not his but belonged to the Sage of 6 Paths and sensed it inside the Leaf Village, possibly engaged with Kurama. Concerned, he moved to check on Haku. He told his wife that he was going to Konoha because something there had caught his interest. His wife nodded, not worried, knowing he could be silent when he needed to be. He kissed his children goodbye, put on his mask so they would not recognize him, and vanished. High above the battlefield he watched from the sky, noting that the defenders were holding their own. He recognized the Rinnegan for the first time and observed that they were drawing on Kurama's chakra in a siphoning way rather than meeting him directly. He judged that if they continued like this they would not survive. He donned his mask more securely and descended. He declared that Yusuke's would die that day and demanded the orb. Everyone was exhausted. He himself felt tired. Yusuke's prepared a final, desperate attack to protect his family and village, forming a powerful bomb-like technique that he had not fully mastered, knowing the strain it placed on his body and the risk to his life. The masked man acknowledged the attack as impressive but warned that Yusuke's, as a Jinchuriki and not a true-tailed beast, would likely perish when he released it. The masked man laughed and then sensed another presence arriving. A sudden, concentrated strike struck the masked man, knocking him off balance. He realized he had allowed Yusuke's to feed the technique with his own chakra so he could absorb it, but the arrival of the new combatant had disrupted the plan and everything spun into chaos. He watched with grim satisfaction as Yusuke's collapsed from total chakra depletion and severe strain. He believed there was nothing anyone could do to save him. At that moment, Naruto landed on the field wielding his six-realm staff. Naruto offered a choice: save the child of prophecy or capture him. The other chose to capture, and Naruto was rendered unconscious almost instantly. The masked man struggled to dispel the illusion that had affected him but failed, frustrated at his lack of preparation for releasing genjutsu. He made a dramatic, self-destructive gesture that left no graphic trace, then turned to see allies gathering around Menma. A barrier formed as he pushed them back and took control of the situation, insisting that he could bring the fallen back but demanding Naruto's body in exchange. No one argued, he held them at bay. Niji, using the Byakugan, examined the chakra and noted how immense it was, comparable to a human-tailed beast, and felt a strange familiarity to the energy. Menma sank into cold water and kept going deeper. Naruto appeared beneath him and swam upward at incredible speed, reaching Menma and forcing air into him until he resurfaced gasping. Back in the real world, Naruto drew a large breath, creating a minor vacuum as he exhaled. He then asked Minato for Naruto's body, but Minato refused. Naruto's anger flared so intensely that everyone felt it, and Minato stammered that a wild animal might have taken the body to its lair. Naruto's ferocity subsided slowly. When Kiba asked why he wanted the demon's body, Naruto said it was his business and walked away. Niji asked how Naruto had managed to revive Menma. Minato and the others were shocked. Minato explained that he had used reanimation techniques combined with his enormous chakra reserves. The method would not kill him but would exhaust him greatly. Everyone was amazed, and before they could ask more questions, he vanished. The only one left with Menma in that moment was Yusuke's, who wondered why the newcomer's chakra felt so familiar. Menma's father collected him, and when Menma asked if the stranger had felt familiar, his father agreed but urged him to rest so they could help the village. Menma nodded and fell asleep, still puzzling over the resemblance. Chapter end. Haku sensed the frustration radiating from her husband when he returned. He told her that Naruto's body had been taken by animals and that the details were uncertain. He removed his mask, transformed his six-realm staff into toys for their children, and put them away. Haku suggested that the Akatsuki might have taken the body, but he dismissed the idea, explaining that they could not restore a soul and could not steal that kind of power. He took some candy and chips to steady his nerves before he planned to act regarding Konoha. Haku smiled, embraced him, and gave him a quick kiss on the cheek. He laughed and scolded her playfully as she continued to tease him. At the enemy stronghold, the leader announced that their plan had succeeded. He called to Zero, the trainee who had just completed his final test. Zero approached with a grim smile. The leader explained that using a scroll they had transformed the clone into his greatest weapon, the Misery Cleaver. When Zero grasped the handle, it seemed to fuel his hate and disdain, and the weapon took the form of a heavy, ominous axe. Zero declared that with this weapon he would at last mete out his divine punishment and bring his revenge upon Konoha, its shinobi, and Naruto. One of the Akatsuki ordered the operative to go to Kumo and retrieve the orb, adding that he should wear an Akatsuki cloak to remain hidden from the enemy. The operative nodded, sheathed a handle on his back, and donned the cloak. Konan asked whether Tonari Otsutsuki would be all right. An elder member reassured her that Tonari's body was unusually resilient to their weapons and that ordinary ninjutsu would not harm him as it would others. Only Naruto and perhaps his wife might stand a chance. The elder then coughed and was sent to bed, muttering that the blade had cost him much of his strength and that he hoped he had been correct about Hajuin. Plans moved toward Kuma. Guards in the streets whispered that the Akatsuki had appeared and caused havoc, destroying a large portion of Konoha. One guard wondered where the man who had resurrected a child had gone. Another, Zero, asked where the orb was. A Kumo ninja burst into the Raikage's office to report the Akatsuki's arrival. The Raikage ordered B and the most important possessions taken to a safe house and rose to confront the threat himself. Meanwhile, Zero advanced through the city, leaving many defenders on the ground and near collapse. He demanded the orb from the Raikage. The Raikage sent a kunai, which Zero evaded before teleporting in and striking. Zero declared that the attack was only the beginning and began teleporting and striking relentlessly, scattering their forces. In short order, Kumo lay in ruins. Many shinobi were critically wounded or unconscious. Zero seized I by the collar while B lay barely conscious at his feet. Zero proclaimed that he had shattered their defenses and bested a tailed beast host and warned that if the orb was not surrendered he would search the fallen for it and bring ruin upon them. His voice carried a cold promise of impending devastation. Reinforcements from other villages arrived too late. The city was devastated and its defenders overwhelmed. Itachi surveyed the scene, stunned that a single individual could have inflicted such destruction. He ordered the medical corps to aid as many as they could and dispatched scouts to determine who had done this and to search for the orb. Far away, Naruto rested his head in a quiet moment beside Haku. He murmured Hajuin and then narrowed his eyes as a dark pressure pressed at him. He warned that Ragnarok was approaching and, when Haku asked when, he answered that it would occur within the year. They rose together, decided to prepare, drew their katanas, and began to spar as a way to sharpen each other for what was coming. Back in Konoha, Minato reacted with disbelief when told that a single person had devastated Kumo. Itachi relayed the Yamanaka analysis. The encounter had been a one-sided massacre. Kunai had been burned on contact, swords had shattered against the assailant's skin, a tailed beast had been overpowered, and the Raikage had been outpaced. They could not confirm the attacker's identity, so the investigators had assigned the alias Ragnarok. Minato recognized the gravity of the threat and instructed that they treat it with utmost caution. Minato then convened teams. He ordered the transport of Pain's body to aim for safekeeping and assigned Niji to carry the large scroll containing the orders. Team Kakashi was to shadow them as reinforcements. Minato worried silently for the safety of the shinobi and the children under their care. 3 teams moved through the forest, leaping from branch to branch. As they advanced, Zero struck without warning. He kicked Niji, seized the scroll, and announced his intention to take pleasure in dismantling Konoha. His sudden surge of malice radiated outward, alerting every nearby shinobi to the danger. Shikamaru ordered formation and warned everyone to avoid direct confrontation. Zero laughed and threatened to destroy them, and the tension froze the area. A woman then interceded, reminding Ragnarok that their mission was to obtain the body, not to slaughter the others. Her arrival calmed him enough for a moment. Suddenly, swift slashes struck the team members, and they collapsed, gravely wounded and unable to continue. Zero defended his actions by noting that he had not been forbidden from putting them out of the fight. The woman sighed but conceded the point, and they vanished together. Team 7 arrived on the scene to find many friends incapacitated. Sakura moved quickly to treat the wounded, pouring all her skill into stabilizing them and fearing that without immediate aid some might not survive. Sasuke ordered the team to heal the most critical injuries and bandage the rest to buy enough time to get back to Konoha. Everyone nodded, carried their injured allies to safety, and reached a hospital in time. 2 Akatsuki members appeared before their master, set a package down, and left. The master expressed a long-held desire for a Rinnegan and thanked Nagato for the contribution. In an almost theatrical display, he absorbed the Rinnegan's power, laughed, and vowed that he would surpass Ryujin and claim what he believed was rightfully his. He declared that the world would be under his command. Menma complained about cleaning the basement when they were supposed to be at the meetings. While sorting boxes, some scrolls fell out. He roused Narumi and pointed out that the scrolls belonged to Naruto, something they had thought had been discarded. At 12, the scrolls turned out to be one of Naruto's old diaries. As Narumi read, she grew more confused and intrigued. The diary revealed that as a child Naruto had felt the villagers' glares and believed many blamed him for the third's death. He wrote about being a 2-year-old with unstable chakra and how unfair it was to assume every Uzumaki could absorb the Kyuubi's chakra. He insisted they were all different. He wrote that he wanted to become a ninja and no longer hold back, that he felt ready to face a Chunin on equal footing thanks to Old Man B, who had since passed. He planned to keep the scroll Old Man B had given him and to hide from whoever this Ragnarok was while continuing his climb to become one of the strongest in the 5 nations. Menma and Narumi exchanged uneasy looks and wondered how little they had really known Naruto. Menma suggested taking the scrolls to Tusan for answers, and Narumi agreed. Age 14. Naruto wrote about finally getting a C-rank mission and feeling conflicted about leaving the village. He admitted he had considered staging a disappearance but chose not to. The mission offered the chance to face Zabuza, and defeating him could elevate Naruto to a B-rank threat at 14, setting him on a path he hoped would put him on par with legends like Madara or Hashirama by his 20s. He acknowledged the risk of punishment but considered it a small price for a chance to grow. He also wrote about complicated feelings. He admitted to liking Haku while being aware that Hinata saw him as a younger brother. He struggled with how confusing love had become and urged himself to stay focused. Strange hallucinations and visions continued to trouble him. A man with flowing hair tipped in blue fire and a demonic smile who carried a strange axe. The sight of him brought not fear but a sense of regret and shame that Naruto couldn't yet explain. Naruto also recorded his training with Madogai, which had helped him prepare for the Chunin exams. He disliked the training outfit but appreciated the progress and thought about getting a gift for Haku. He mentioned a mysterious savior in the village and wondered whether that person was genuinely selfless or trying to bind others to him. Still, Haku was happy, and that made Naruto content. Council meeting. At the council, Hayashi exploded with frustration over how their transport to AIM had been compromised. He reported that his daughter, his nephew, and many of their strongest ninja were badly wounded but alive. Civilian council members began to assign blame to Naruto, but Menma and the rest of the Konoha 13 burst into the room with new information. Menma informed Tusan that he had found something in Naruto's old scrolls that might relate to the Akatsuki. He explained that the diary mentioned a mentor called Old Man B and that Naruto had written a warning about Ragnarok coming soon. Menma suggested that the warning might be linked to the figure who had once defeated Kumo. The council exchanged tense looks as they began to consider the possibility that Naruto had predicted part of the current threat. Narumi explained that, while reading, he had described a figure who, when cross-referenced with their Ragnarok records, matched in almost every detail except for an axe. Naruto appeared to have hidden something of his own. Kiba reacted with anger and frustration, telling the others that Naruto had known this might happen and had said nothing. He muttered that he felt betrayed. Haku checked Kiba, and Kiba nodded, insisting he was fine and that he had only been shaken by intrusive thoughts. Menma protested that he would not call Naruto weak, noting that Naruto had completed the Taekwondo in the finals and could still hold his own in a fight. Inoichi pressed for details about what had been hidden and where. Menma said the missing item appeared to be a scroll whose location was unknown but which seemed powerful enough to warrant being concealed. The group sighed at the implication. Some suggested using the Yamanaka mind-gathering technique, but noted they lacked the necessary body to do so. Niji offered another lead. The man who had brought Menma back to life had seemed angry when they could not locate Naruto's body. Perhaps that man knew where the scroll was hidden. If so, he might be affiliated with the Akatsuki or opposed to Ragnarok. Everyone agreed there was more to the situation than met the eye, and that they had more questions than answers. Minato reflected on how Naruto fit into all of this. When everyone else had left the Yuzuke's family, Narumi asked Minato what, if anything, they knew that others did not. They realized they truly knew very little, no secrets beyond small personal impressions. Narumi then produced a scroll and revealed that it mentioned a woman named Haku, who appeared to have been close to Naruto during the Chunin exam break. The notes suggested they had been romantically involved, and Narumi thought Haku might know something. Minato expressed disbelief that he had not known this about his former son. Menma wondered aloud why, if Naruto had viewed Hinata as a little sister, he would have taken her. The situation seemed suspicious. He also noted that, having completed the Taekwondo, Naruto must possess a movement technique and might have been able to escape if he had wanted to. They traded theories but found none satisfying. Menma then gave orders in a serious tone: investigate Naruto's identity and any connection to the Akatsuki. He designated the mission as SSS rank and instructed Narumi and Menma to keep the matter secret from everyone else. The others nodded and left. Once the door closed, Minato slumped with the weight of guilt and uncertainty. If Naruto had been framed by the Akatsuki, Minato feared it reflected not only on Naruto but on his own failures as a parent. He wondered whether the Akatsuki had taken Naruto's body and the scroll, and he regretted how harshly he had treated his child. A short while later, Menma gathered the team, everyone except Kiba, Niji, and Hinata, and asked what they knew about Naruto that others did not. The group admitted that their knowledge was limited. His taijutsu was well known across the village, but they did not know why he chose not to become clan head or many other personal details. Menma then told them about Haku, the person from the scroll who had been close to Naruto during the Chunin exam break. The team reacted with surprise. Menma asked whether it would make sense for someone involved in a relationship to also abduct a person they regarded as a sibling. The question led to uneasy speculation about motives. Choji wondered if this explained the absence of the 3 missing individuals. Tenten suggested that Naruto might have had ulterior motives, and the group fell silent. Narumi raised the possibility that Haku could be the same person who had risked her life to save Zabuza at the bridge, suspecting they might be the same individual. Menma agreed they might be onto something but insisted they keep the information contained to avoid stirring up trouble. He proposed asking Tusan whether the Mizukage could arrange a meeting with Haku in 2 days to pursue their investigation. As they headed to the Hokage's office, Menma paused and asked Narumi to consider the possibility that Naruto might be innocent. The group continued toward the next step of their investigation, determined to follow the leads they had uncovered. Kurama gritted his teeth and clenched his fist, insisting that, if he were innocent, he would not be surprised if the man had cursed them in his last moments. Narumi ranted that they had gone through all the archives and turned the room upside down, but had only found 2 scrolls, and both were blank. Menma sighed, exhausted, and mentally asked Kurama if he had any ideas. Kurama replied with a gruff question about when he had become anyone's advocate. Menma answered that Kurama had lived since the time of the Sage of 6 Paths. Kurama muttered that, as the son of the Yellow Flash, one of the most dangerous people in the 5 nations, he was humoring them despite thinking most of the family, save Naruto, were foolish. Kurama argued that Naruto had been exceptionally clever and that killing him without a fair trial had squandered enormous potential. Narumi pressed that this sounded like a plan, wondering aloud if the whole thing had been orchestrated. Kurama complained that the fox would tease them with a lead and then leave them to puzzle it out. Narumi reminded everyone that Naruto had once said, at 12 years old, that he would use chakra to send messages to allies. Menma recalled the comment and realized that, if Naruto had been that clever, he might have developed something useful in just a couple of years. All they needed now was a dojutsu user to confirm it. Sai materialized, surprising them. Narumi noted that she thought he was still on a mission. Sai explained that he had finished some time ago and had overheard their conversation. He had kept his suspicions to himself until now. Sai reasoned that writing with chakra indicated either exceptional chakra control or a dojutsu, and since they could dismiss the latter, what they needed was a strong sensor-type ninja. When the group pointed out how difficult that would be, Sai proposed using Sage Mode. He explained that Sage Mode, which infuses nature energy into chakra, could allow them to perceive information while in that state. One of them entered Sage Mode, hoping to glean something significant, but could only perceive fragments. He lamented that the vision might be fading because the person was dead, or because someone had used a reanimation technique, leaving only partial images. He wished Naruto were there to ask directly. Narumi, Sai, and the others sighed in frustration and left the house. In another place, the man observed that the small seeds planted to prove his innocence through death had begun to bear fruit. People wanted to meet him. The woman beside him agreed with a soft laugh, teasing him about his calculated approach to making them feel the weight of their actions. He admitted to being methodical across many viewpoints. Their babies cried loudly, and the woman sighed about how they managed with 3 children before she went to tend to them. Naruto prepared to leave, giving Haku a brief, affectionate farewell before teleporting away. Haku sighed and set about the cleaning, then sensed approaching chakra and opened the door before the visitors knocked. The visitors stood in the doorway, taken aback by Haku's composure and presence. They explained that they had come to ask about her relationship with Naruto. Haku allowed them in and answered that Naruto Yuzuke's had been her boyfriend, and she could not believe he would stoop to what he was accused of. They asked whether she knew of any scrolls Naruto might have hidden. Haku thought for a moment and then named the scroll of Hajuin. The visitors looked confused at the unfamiliar name. Haku explained that the scroll effectively sealed the soul of a great calamity to prevent it from finding a host and that Naruto had warned it could end the shinobi world. Menma asked if such a dangerous item should not be stored in the Konoha safes. Haku shook her head and began to explain the reasons, pausing to consider how to continue. She explained that someone would likely try to unseal him and force him into a vessel to gain power. Unlike the tailed beasts, he had no natural rival. With Nara gone, the only thing she could think of that might match him was the 10 tails from the era of the Sage of 6 Paths. She explained that, and although their pride was stung by the implication that they were weak, she was not wrong. Both had failed to defeat Pain and one had died. A large portion of the village had been destroyed. He had not even been the strongest, since Ragnarok had dismantled Kumo and recently IW by himself. She had every right to speak as she did. She offered to examine the scrolls and tell them if she found anything useful. They looked surprised at her chakra mastery but, reluctant though they were, they handed the scrolls over. She read carefully and explained that the scrolls contained intense training regimens, one to sharpen chakra in all aspects and another to strengthen the body. She copied everything onto 2 different scrolls. They were amazed at the difficulty and at the advantages. The routines promised to elevate a civilian genin to an ANBU captain level in 6 months. Excitement rose among them until Haku raised a difficult question about their brother's execution on charges of treason. They had no unanimous answer. Part of them insisted he would never stoop so low, but the evidence pointed otherwise. Before they could respond, crying interrupted the moment. She teleported away and returned with a bottle, warmed it with her fire affinity, and fed the baby. She asked again for their thoughts. Menma admitted that at the time he had not wanted to believe their brother capable of such actions, but there had been a lot of undeniable evidence. Now he was unsure whether the brother had tried to kidnap Hinata or betray his home. The others found the possibility of a frame-up plausible. They observed that Naruto had honor and would not attack someone helpless, and it seemed suspicious he would try to take Hinata for himself when he had someone as beautiful as Narumi at his side. Narumi chuckled at their earnestness. They took the copied scrolls, stood, and bowed to Haku in unison, thanking her for her help. Haku smiled and asked them to clear his name if they found he had been framed. They nodded and left. From a distance, a woman watched the fugitives flee and realized someone had attempted to poison her children. She made a cold, determined vow of retribution and, seeing Sasori and Konan at a far distance, realized they had been forced to retreat. Sasori panicked at being seen through Konan and he fled, knowing they could not risk returning to their hideout. The woman readied herself, expecting a confrontation that would demand everything she had. Narumi later wondered aloud whether Haku had looked momentarily furious when she fed the baby, noting a spike in chakra. Menma dismissed it with a shrug and an offhand remark about a mother's insistence on the freshest for her child. They laughed, then continued leaping from tree to tree. When they returned home, Menma reported to Minato that they had gathered more information. Minato had dispatched his umbu and the heads of the other households and, after activating a silent seal, motioned for them to speak. Menma explained that the hidden scroll Naruto had concealed was called the Scroll of Hajuin. Hajuin, he said, was a powerful spirit from the Sage of 6 Paths era whose strength had rivaled the 10 Tails. Although Hajuan had been defeated, his soul had remained intact, unsealed. It could possess someone and cause great destruction. To prevent anyone from unleashing or trying to control it, history had kept the scroll hidden. Minato, absorbing the weight of that danger and the burden Naruto had carried, concluded that it would be best not to pursue the scroll for now. His twins agreed. Back at the Ryujin house, Naruto returned to find Haku sharpening her blade with a calm, unreadable expression. He sighed, set down a bento, and told her not to worry about explaining everything. Haku offered him a warm, affectionate smile and a quick embrace before vanishing. The children glanced after her, curious, but soon turned back to their toys. Haku moved through the trees until she reached a valley, where she taunted the approaching opponents for their lack of preparation. She spread a pale mist designed to weaken those unaccustomed to such toxins. Only she and Naruto, hardened by seasoning, remained unaffected. She unsheathed her blade and made short work of several paper bombs, freezing them in place as she neutralized the immediate threat. Konan and Sasori advanced from a distance. Haku signaled that they should coordinate close and long-range tactics. They adjusted their approach. Haku moved with astonishing speed, weaving among puppets and turning their forms to ice, which then shattered into harmless fragments. Konan reacted with alarm and launched an explosive paper spear. Sasori sent forward his puppets for an aerial strike. Two stitched hands snatched at Haku's feet while a large puppet dove in from behind, and the follow-up detonations rocked the valley. The area echoed with the sounds of battle as the combatants continued to clash in a swift, stylized confrontation. Niji noted that the noise was loud and the other teams nodded in agreement. Konoha a few hours earlier, an ANBU operative reported that Akatsuki members Kazu and Deidara were on the move and had been spotted. Minato listened seriously and ordered Team 7 through 9 to be deployed. He nodded and created clones to carry the orders. Back in the field, the explosion faded to reveal Haku almost unharmed, dusting the residue from her clothes as a cold smile crossed her face. She praised the spectacle and then vanished. Kakazu and the others searched frantically, unable to sense her. Haku reappeared behind Kazu and struck with a precise technique that left him gravely damaged and incapacitated, though he still managed to use the little chakra he had left to summon Zetsu. Haku remarked that one was down and moved on. She confronted Sasori. His puppet defenses activated, revealing his human puppet form and summoning thousands of puppets. Kakuzu called on his remaining strength to summon hundreds of Zetsu and several larger creations. Haku drew her twin katanas, channeled wind chakra to push her opponents back, and lowered the temperature around her until a biting cold settled across the battlefield. A few hours away, Tenten noticed snowflakes beginning to fall. The teams halted, and a sudden gust of wind threw them back. They used chakra to anchor themselves to a tree and shield their eyes. Ino stared in disbelief as the landscape transformed into a frozen tundra, leaves stiffened by ice. Narumi exchanged a grave look with Menma, who suspected that Haku, a Yuki clan survivor, might be responsible. They pressed on cautiously. Deidara was blown a short distance and recovered, surveying a tundra where Zetsu lay frozen and motionless, some broken apart in the blast. Sasori marveled at the sheer scale of power displayed by a single person. Konan agreed that Haku's capabilities were akin to those of a human-tailed beast. The Akatsuki members finally saw Haku clearly. Haku activated her signature sealing technique, Daiguren Hyarinmaru, drawing in chakra and strengthening her form within the frozen terrain. The technique required temperatures below freezing and the presence of snow. Within its domain, a calm, drawing force pulled chakra inward and created an oppressive stillness that made any forward movement feel suicidal to the attackers. Haku announced that if they would not come to her, she would go to them. She teleported to Konan, who stood frozen with a look of shock. Haku lifted Konan's chin and, with a solemn sadness, transformed her into a frozen statue, a quiet, painless end. She repeated the same for Sasori and Deidara, and when the cold receded the three remained as unmoving frozen figures, their forms intact but eerily still. Naruto was at home, taking a rare moment to relax with his children. He thought it far more peaceful than hunting for information or engaging in meaningless fights. playing with Raiden while clones tended to hit Suguya and Mikasa. The moment of calm shattered as his home exploded. He scooped up his children and teleported them a safe distance away. The blast had meant to reach them, and Naruto swore inwardly that those responsible would face the consequences. Mikasa cried, and Naruto ordered the children taken to Haku's care before vanishing to confront the attackers. He summoned his staff to identify which Akatsuki had struck his home. As he reached the scene, Naruto realized his attackers were Root Umbu. He addressed Danzo in his mind, noting the audacity but vowing that the soldier boys would not return. His staff vanished and a knuckle duster appeared on his right fist. He took up a fighting stance and faced thousands of operatives. Naruto ignited his knuckles with a fierce blue flame and launched an onslaught that took out several hundred assailants at once. He combined elemental techniques fire, water, earth, lightning, and wind in a coordinated barrage that forced the attackers to synchronize their counterstrike. As their assault converged, a massive aura burst outward from Naruto, scattering the remaining attackers and their formations. Menma called out to Haku as the teams regrouped and saw her standing with the others. Naruto asked whether Haku had been responsible for the devastation. Haku nodded, her expression casual enough to stun them. Naruto wondered aloud why Haku had retired from the life of a shinobi. Haku moved to answer, but clones suddenly appeared carrying Naruto's children. Haku's face tightened with distress when she recognized them, then softened as she saw they were unharmed. The clones explained in measured tones that they had been ambushed but had anticipated the attack and fled with the children before any harm could come. Haku held her children close to calm them. Haku then demanded to know what had become of her husband, her voice a mix of worry and controlled anger. The clones reported that he was still fighting the assailants and then vanished. Hinata caught a fleeting glimpse of the clones' faces but could not identify them clearly and voiced concern. Haku reassured everyone that there was nothing to worry about and prepared to move forward with the rest of the teams. Sakura said they needed to move the children to their grandparents. Before she could leave, an ANBU attacked, but she teleported a short distance away. Menma saw the ANBU mask and used his authority as Minato's son to insist they stand down and identify themselves, explaining that the woman and children were allies. Haku told them quietly that these were not ANBU, and the group formed a protective perimeter around Haku and the children. Sakura signaled the others to move ahead, reluctant but nodding because her children were the priority. A route commander reported to Danzo that the Ryujin household had been ambushed but the children could not be captured for leverage, and that Haku was being protected by the Yuzukes. Only the highest commanders knew that Danzo had kept certain facts close to his chest. Danzo answered coldly that the children must be taken, insisting that possessing them would guarantee his rise to Hokage. He ordered the operatives to target the children and nothing else. Naruto arrived on a battlefield strewn with the fallen and released his power, using Nirvana to detect that Haku was being targeted. He warned that Konoha had made the wrong enemy and raced toward their location, appearing as a blur. Animals fled or froze under the force of his intense aura. Haku struggled, using the mirror technique to dodge and evade. The attackers kept shattering every mirror she created while trying to isolate the targets and press Menma and his allies. Menma used Kurama's chakra to bolster defenses and to tend to the wounded. He nearly lost his arm in the defense but kept fighting to shield Haku and the children. Lee reassured the group that they could hold the line. The babies giggled, and the scene stilled as a terrifying chakra swept in unadulterated anger that made even Hinata and Niji tremble. The presents arrived in front of Haku and the team prepared to strike, but the children called out for their father and reached toward the newcomer. He smiled in a way that unsettled everyone else and told the Yuzukes group to take the children away while he dealt with the attackers. A golden lion-shaped scythe marked one of the ANBU, and from the weapon came a burst of dark flame. The Yuzukes obeyed and departed with the children while the rest of the group followed to maintain the perimeter. Niji worried aloud about what the newcomer intended for the children. Haku answered calmly that he would most likely draw power from them and then seek whoever had ordered the attack. The newcomer applauded the defenders with cold praise and warned that if the situation had been different they would have been finished quickly. He then slowed time almost to a stop, narrowing the flow of the world around them. Within that suspended moment, he unleashed overwhelming techniques that pinned and restrained their opponents, stretching their struggle into what felt like an eternity and leaving them immobilized and in intense pain. Naruto teleported behind Haku, startling her before she recovered. He examined her arm, noting the charring, and assured her she would be all right. He explained that the attackers were Danzo's private route Anbu and gathered Mikasa and Raiden into protective custody. When Shikamaru asked how he had known about the assault, Naruto said he maintained an extensive spy network. Naruto began to offer compensation, but Menma interrupted, saying they did not need money and might instead provide information. Naruto asked about Ragnarok, and Menma answered that Ragnarok was the most dangerous of the threats he knew of. Naruto inquired why the attackers wanted the orbs. Menma explained that those orbs were used to break high-level seals and negate protections, and that only a particular, now rare bloodline could safely wield them. He approached Menma and used a rapid healing technique. A green glow flowed over Menma's arm and it healed quickly. Menma thought silently that such advanced healing had been unexpected. Before vanishing with Haku, Naruto warned that Danzo would face him again. Back with the group, Tenten observed that the newcomer had looked familiar. Choji agreed that the figure bore a resemblance to an adult Naruto, though most pointed out that Naruto had been considered dead and the physical differences made it unlikely. Ino admitted privately that the man had an appealing presence but noted he was married. Naruto joked about returning to base and suggested it would be easier to contact their allies than to trek deeper into the woods. Menma insisted they bring the information to the Hokage as soon as possible so further inquiries could be made. As they left for Konoha, Haku laughed while holding Hitsuguya and observed that he had not shown malice toward his former family but had shown gratitude instead. Naruto rolled her eyes and explained that the people in Konoha believed her dead, and that Ryujin Naruto did not know anyone from the village, so there was no reason to hold malice. She smiled as they entered a misty area and noted that they were getting close. The babies giggled at the thought of meeting their grandparents, Mei and Zabuza. They passed into the borders and encountered a familiar figure. Utakata approached, a tall, thin man with pale golden eyes and brown hair, wearing a light blue kimono with a small emblem of 3 bubbles on the back, gray pants, and an orange sash, carrying a bamboo jug of soap solution and a pipe. Utakata greeted them warmly and said it was nice to see Lady Haku and Naruto. Naruto commented that Utakata still was not much of a talker, and they proceeded to the Mizukage Tower. Naruto greeted her mother on entering, and Mei rose to embrace the couple. Mei expressed relief at seeing the grandchildren and swaddled Raiden, who laughed. Naruto announced that they were back and planned to stay for a while, encouraging everyone to get comfortable. Mei began to fuss over the babies and teased that Naruto still had the Akatsuki problem to handle first. Haku reassured her that after dealing with that, they would spoil the children rotten, which made Naruto shiver and think about practicalities. Haku then stepped away briefly, kissed Naruto, and bowed to Mei before teleporting away. Mei, smirking, teased Haku about her husband's fidelity, and Haku bristled before following Mei into the house. Meanwhile, the Konoha 13 arrived at the Kage Tower and immediately headed inside. Menma urgently alerted everyone that Danzo had been taken. Koharu confirmed that the kidnapping had been reported a few hours earlier and that searches were ongoing. Flashback. The council had convened an emergency meeting about Danzo. Fugaku had questioned the point of the gathering, but his skepticism turned to concern when he noticed panic in Danzo's expression. Danzo claimed to have information the council would want to hear. Naruto, masked, demanded to know what Danzo meant, drawing tension across the room. Danzo released a chilling aura that silenced everyone and then activated a strange, ornate staff. The staff unfurled into multiple scroll-like forms and radiated heat and light, forcing the council to shield their eyes. When the light subsided, the staff had transformed into a weapon with a lion-headed motif. In the blink that followed, Danzo used the staff to make someone vanish, leaving the council stunned. And a flashback. Back in the present, Niji observed how fast Danzo had been. The council explained the flashback and the implications, and rising anger filled the room. Tsunade slammed her hands on the table in fury, cracking the surface, and demanded to know Danzo's whereabouts so she could confront him. Tsum joined in, demanding answers with equal intensity. Koha, however, suggested that Danzo's claims might have merit, pointing out that the staff identified him. Minato challenged Koharu to repeat herself, and Hamura noted that the staff's appearance meant Danzo likely deployed his own forces to manipulate others into aiding him. Kushina responded with skepticism about the abilities of those Danzo might have coerced, speaking in a dismissive tone. At that moment Naruto reappeared and reported returning from dealing with the matter, criticizing the Konoha elders as a circus act. Dainbu moved to detain Naruto, but he easily deflected them and left a folder on Minato's desk before teleporting back to Mizu. Minato ordered the council members restrained until further notice, and the remaining counselors were detained for questioning. Minato accused the elders of staging a coup against the Uchiha, selling Hyuga secrets, and planning to use his children as leverage to control the village. He voiced hope that Danzo had not escaped justice. Menma rifled through the documents and stopped at a particular paper, calling his father's attention. Minato read and realized why they had been unable to find a certain body. When asked whose body he meant, Minato admitted that he, Hayashi, and others had been involved in a secretive matter and had kept it close. With a heavy sigh, he asked the council to promise not to react before revealing the contents. He then disclosed a document indicating that Danzo had sold a body to the Akatsuki, which left the council in shock. Shikaku asked whether Danzo had sold the remains of a former Hokage. Menma, voice trembling, identified the individual involved. Hayashi reacted with disbelief and fury at the implication that Naruto had been involved in treachery against Konoha. The council listened as Minato and the others began to lay out the details of the secret mission and its consequences. Fugaku sighed, incredulous that they had not been informed earlier about the revelations. He recounted that someone had mastered a form of combat, kept a sealed demon from Konoha security, and that the man's body had been taken for experiments. Jiraiya asked why they had not been told. The others explained they had to be sure they were not being deceived. Shikamaru pointed out the contradiction. If Naruto had hidden so much from them and from the Akatsuki, why would he willingly make a deal with them? Shikaku agreed that it seemed to defeat the purpose of secrecy. Their discussion was cut short when a shinobi opened the doors to announce that the Akatsuki had arrived. Naruto was relaxing in a bath with sake when he suddenly opened his eyes and announced that he had found Zero and was leaving. His partner nodded, and he teleported away. As she prepared to relax, she sensed hundreds of life signs approaching and cursed under her breath. She summoned her katana and teleported to the tower. She reported to Mei that a large attack was occurring from the north, west, and south, and that 5 chakra signatures suggested reanimation. She ordered everyone notified and a sealing team organized, promising to hold the threat off with the summon monsters. Mei recovered her composure and assigned forces. One group would go south, Zabuza would lead north, and she would take west. Halu teleported out. A field commander reported that the attack had 3 directions. The masked man was on the west side, and hundreds of pale creatures were approaching in waves, some the size of an average person, targeting their people. Other villages were experiencing the same problems. Minato turned serious and ordered everyone to gather. He assigned Rin, Kakashi, Fugaku, Hayashi, Itachi, and Shursui to take a team north. The Sannin took a group west, and Minato would lead the southern group. Everyone moved out to battle. Naruto stood in a forest and observed that it was a fine place for a trap. He recognized the clone in front of him as Zero, a being created from his and Tonari's genetic material, and noted the resemblance as he addressed him as son. Tonari watched from a distance, cackling softly as his plan unfolded. Both villages were under attack. Naruto knew his son's identity, and Tonari intended to deal with all 3 at once. He admitted they needed to keep Naruto distracted a little longer. In the southern sector, Haku faced 5 legendary swordsmen of the mist. She introduced herself as the daughter of Zabuza Momochi and the current wielder of a chipless blade, and the opponents acknowledged her skill. As the skirmish began, a large needle whistled past her face. She caught it and threw it back with tremendous force. The needle struck one opponent and he was immediately encased in ice and rendered immobile. The others noted the seals on their fallen comrade and advanced. Haku unleashed a flurry of snowflake-like ice techniques that slowed and eventually froze their reanimated attackers at range. The enemy tried to counter with a powerful water torrent, but Haku focused her blade and sent a concentrated beam of light through the wave, splitting and then freezing parts of it. Her mastery of both sword and chakra impressed the attackers, who agreed to test her to see if she could be recognized among the legendary swords. Haku accepted, and the clash continued in swift, stylized exchanges. Konoha handled the central threat efficiently. Minato engaged the masked man while Fugaku confronted him from another angle. Minato struck the man's mask, sending him into the trees and cracking the mask on impact. When Minato saw the unmasked face, he was stunned to recognize Obito. Minato ordered Itachi to use his Sharingan to determine whether the situation was an illusion and to attempt to break it. Itachi nodded and led the masked man to a private place for further examination. Naruto confronted Zero and asked why Zero had aligned himself with Tonari. Zero said Tonari had given him life and power and had given him a soul in a way Naruto had not. Naruto admitted that he had faked his death and had not intended to create a life. The revelation enraged Zero. He radiated a violent surge of energy that drained nearby plant life and stunned small animals, leaving the battlefield eerily still while Naruto remained unaffected. Zero issued a threat, taunting Naruto to enjoy time with his children because Zero intended to come for them after finishing with Naruto. Before Zero could attack, a golden scythe flashed at his neck and singed his skin, and Tonari spoke in a cold, steady voice to remind Zero that his existence was owed to those who made him and that he should not push his luck. The warning made Zero hesitate. Naruto prepared to leave when Zero launched a Senbon toward him, and the confrontation continued. Naruto teleported in front of the Senbon and grabbed Mikasa, shouting in shock. Flashback. Haku fought 4 of the 7 swordsmen of the mist while 2 others were elsewhere. One of the swordsmen slipped into a house and moved past layers of ceiling talismans to reach a crib where sleeping babies lay. The intruder hated being forced into the task, but a binding seal on his soul kept him from resisting. She placed a seal on Mikasa and teleported away, having already sounded the alarm. While Haku was fighting, a burning sensation flared along her arm and her eyes flared with fury. She channeled an ice technique that combined freezing and flame, summoning white fire that swept the ground before crystallizing and halting the swordsman. She then dashed toward her children at tremendous speed. In a flashback, Naruto held Mikasa and formed a defensive barrier with his arm to protect her. A Senbon struck him, slowing him as a figure named Zero materialized before him. Zero declared Naruto his enemy and unleashed spectral chains that wrapped around Naruto, draining a portion of his power into a glowing orb. Naruto staggered and fell under the strain but managed to teleport back. Zero warned that Naruto had only months left and urged him to savor his remaining time with his family before teleporting away. Obito stirred in a hospital bed and woke up sweating, overwhelmed by confusion and guilt. Rin appeared and hugged him, letting him hold her as she cried. When Minato, Itachi, Kakashi, and the rest of the Konoha team arrived, they found Rin and Obito in a close embrace. Obito warned them silently to keep quiet, and they lowered their voices, saying they were there to learn what had happened when he was with the Akatsuki. After gathering himself, Obito confessed that while traveling back from a mission near Aim he encountered Nagato, known as Pain. Nagato overwhelmed the team, and Obito was captured and brought before Tonari Otsutsuki, a surviving member of a forgotten clan. Tonari placed Obito under a genjutsu that forced him to obey and commit acts he could not accept. The others pressed him to continue, and with a heavy voice Obito admitted that he had been the one responsible for the Kyuubi incident while under that control. The revelation stunned everyone. Minato refused to blame him for actions taken while not in control, and Obito remained consumed by shame. When Niji asked who had caused this, Obito hesitated and then, in a whisper, named Naruto. The group reacted with mixed emotions: shock, anger, and confusion, while Obito promised to explain the hidden parts of Naruto's story. Obito recounted that he had faced pain at 14 and had been presumed dead afterward. He was about to clarify uncertainties when Naruto rushed out with the Konoha team close behind. Haku, at home, panicked inwardly at the thought of her child trapped somewhere cold and alone. Naruto returned alongside Hitsugaya and Raiden, and Haku breathed a sigh of relief, scooping Mikasa into her arms and noting that Naruto was injured. She told him she would put the children to bed and fetch a medical kit, then asked him to rest on the couch. Seeing a dark line across his forearm, she moved quickly to care for him. She placed the children in their cribs, retrieved supplies, and sat beside her husband. He listed, with dry sarcasm, all he had endured, being poisoned, protecting his daughter from a cloned adversary, and having a portion of his energy taken. Haku worked steadily to remove the toxin and dress his wound. She insisted that he rest and, when he tried to protest, she sat close and fixed him with a steady, caring gaze until he relented and leaned into her embrace. The moment between them softened into quiet affection. Naruto allowed himself to relax and followed her guidance, smiling despite his pain. They shared a gentle, domestic exchange before settling together on the couch. Menma and others caught up with Naruko, and Menma urged her to listen. The story was not finished. Naruko broke down, sobbing that they had betrayed him, that their own family had turned away after everything he had done. She lamented that they had even failed to provide a proper remembrance, and the weight of those memories crushed them all. The image of the person they had once admired, the perfect shinobi and brother, haunted them as they grappled with the reality of how their family had treated him. Hinata admitted that she did not trust him as Obito sat down beside her. Obito then said that if their estranged son returned to kill them, he would not blame him and that they were the worst, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Hinata, crying, confessed that she had loved him yet had believed he would betray her, that all he had wanted was acknowledgement and instead had received execution for a crime he did not commit. She wondered how she could look at him now. Everyone was swallowed by self-hatred, guilt, and pity. Obito informed the group that their son was alive. They turned to him and saw that he was. Being supported by Kakashi, the news shocked them. Kakashi protested that he had seen the young man stabbed through the heart and that he understood the desire to ease their pain, but as far as he knew the boy was gone. Obito explained that they had attempted to use the reanimation technique to bring him to their side and had failed. After several more attempts, they had reluctantly accepted the possibility that he might still be alive. That possibility was confirmed, Obito said, when Haku inexplicably quit being a ninja to be with her boyfriend Naruto Ryujin, who had appeared after his reported death, so the timeline matched. Sasuke muttered that the man they had seen with Haku had resembled Naruto, and that now the pieces fit. He knew of Root, a secretive network that had been kept even from the Hokage. Minato decided to prepare a journey to Mizugakure and to inform the other Kage of whatever plans they were facing. He worried over how to tell Kushina whether to start with the fact that their disowned son might be alive or that he had been framed, either of which would devastate her. They all nodded and went home, each drowning in guilt and unable to imagine forgiveness. Naruko asked Minato if he thought their son would ever forgive them. Minato sighed, rubbed his eyes, and told her to hold on to hope that he would understand. He resolved to be the first to tell Kushina and the Sannin. In an unknown location, Zero laughed as he overpowered Tonari and delivered a decisive, brutal strike that felled him. Zero laughed maniacally and then began the drawn-out process of merging with the Jubi, drawing on fragmented spirits to bind power to himself. The Konoha 13, joined by Kushina, the Sannin, Kakashi, Obito, and Rin, gathered. Obito asked if they were all ready and the group nodded. Flashback. Minato arrived home to find Kushina and the Sannin waiting. Orochimaru asked why he had called them and Minato admitted that it was complicated. He rubbed his eyes to stem his grief and tried to explain. Minato felt the weight of having condemned his eldest son without cause. He had thought he had done the right thing, but now, after everything that had come to light, he felt that he had lost his son before the boy had even reached genin rank. Kushina moved to comfort him, knowing him too well to stand by and do nothing. Kushina urged Minato to explain so they could help. Minato warned that it was not a small mistake that could be easily fixed. Then he told them that Naruto had been framed. Menma and Naruko retreated quietly to their rooms at the word. Tsunade reacted with stunned disbelief and then tears, while Orochimaru and Jiraiya listened in shock. Minato recounted what Obito had told them, and the story of manipulation and staged events that had been used against the boy unfolded. Orochimaru observed in a low voice that the conspiracy would explain why the boy had never displayed his full capabilities and how Konoha had been quick to turn against him in the wake of the Ninetales incident. Kushina began to spiral, haunted by memories of her son and the echo of a child's voice saying "Mom" in her head. Minato told them they had reason to suspect that he might still be alive, citing the Ryujin connection, and said he would send the Konoha 13 with his former student to investigate. Kushina insisted on coming, saying that if there was even a small chance he was her son, she had to see him. The Sannin agreed to accompany them, and Minato decided to teleport the team to the nearest village to Mizugakure the next morning while the Sannin prepared. After teleporting to his office, Minato activated a silencing seal and released a raw cry of rage. He threw papers and objects across his desk and struck the table with enough force to crack it, then sank to his knees and sobbed, repeatedly lamenting that he had killed his son. Kushina, left alone in their room, was a wreck. She clutched a family photograph and wept her heart out, searching for any trace of him only to find that there was almost nothing left, so much had been discarded. Or she believed until Naruto came in with some of Naruto's old things. She calmed enough to sort through the box and found a photograph of them all smiling, Naruto ruffling the hair of his former sibling. Kushina remembered apologizing to her eldest in the quiet of her mind, and she cried herself to sleep, only to be plagued by nightmares. The flashback ended. Minato asked if they were all ready, and they nodded. He formed a pentagon seal and guided them through. They were teleported to the outskirts of a small village. Minato warned that Mizu lay just beyond the forest and to stay close because the mist would thicken as they began their journey. As they traveled, they noticed the Yuzukes moving faster. Kiba shouted for them to slow down, but they ignored him. Sasuke argued that they should let the others go, pointing out that he would have done the same in their position, and then they quickened their pace to catch up. Menma watched and wondered why his brother had helped them, replaying recent events in his mind. Kushina silently prayed for her son to forgive her, hoping somehow he would. At the Ryujin household, Haku woke to find Naruto sleeping peacefully. She noted that he was fast asleep and that the children were also resting. Smiling, she dressed and prepared a small breakfast, unaware of the stresses the evening would bring. Naruto greeted Haku in the morning, kissed her cheek, and made tea. She asked how his night had been. He said it had been good and playfully suggested they spend some time together. Haku blushed and laughed, reminding him they already had 3 children. Naruto wrapped his arms around her waist, insisting that having children did not mean they could not still enjoy themselves. When Haku suggested perhaps later, Naruto pouted in playful disappointment. They tended to the children. Naruto played with Raiden and Hitsuguya while Haku read to Mikasa. Naruto remarked that it was a perfect day as the children began to yawn. After they put the children to bed, Haku suggested they spend some quiet time together and Naruto carried her toward the bedroom. Their moment was cut short when they sensed the chakra of many approaching shinobi. They both swore in frustration at the interruption and dressed quickly. Naruto was about to head out when Haku stopped him, warning that he might react too forcefully. The chakra signatures belonged to Konoha Nin. Naruto nodded reluctantly as Haku went to meet them. Tsunade marveled at how well off the family seemed, recalling stories that linked Naruto to the man who had defeated the 3 Tails. The group approached the large compound on the outskirts, stunned by its beauty. Before Kushina could knock, Haku opened the door and asked if she could help them. Those who had not seen Haku before were struck by her presence. Kiba felt his heart tugged and Obito greeted her. Haku narrowed her eyes and recognized Obito's chakra, realizing he had been the masked man. The realization washed over the visitors. Obito explained they had come to speak with Mr. Ryujin, Naruto. Haku responded that anything they wished to say to her husband could be said to her. Kushina pleaded that it was important to speak with Naruto, which mildly irritated Haku until she dropped her pretense and confronted them. Haku asked why she should allow them to see her husband after what they had done to him, and the group was stunned to learn she had been aware. Jiraiya pleaded that they needed to speak with Naruto, and before Haku could reply, Naruto appeared at the doorway and demanded to know what they wanted, glaring at them. Kushina called his name with glassy eyes. Tsunade stepped forward and said they wished to ask him something. Under Naruto's dark gaze, Tsunade nervously asked why he had not told them his family about his true self. Naruto scoffed and retorted that his family would not have neglected him, which caused Menma and Naruto to look down. Jiraiya tried to intervene, but Naruto threatened him, making Jiraiya flinch. Kushina reached out to touch Naruto's cheek, but Haku gently pushed her hand away and stated that was as close as she would be allowed. Kushina felt anger at Haku for preventing her from touching her son, yet she also realized her disbelief had consequences. Naruto told them to leave if they had nothing else to say. Obito then stepped forward and announced that they wanted Naruto to come with them, which halted him. Naruto demanded clarification with visible anger. Obito explained that Naruto possessed chakra orbs and a fragment of Kushina's soul, and that, whether Naruto liked it or not, they would need each other's help. Naruto asked what they could offer in return, and Obito admitted they had nothing. As Naruto began to close the door, the others shouted that the matter concerned his children's safety. Obito explained that a part of Naruto's soul had been lost because Mizu had not been sufficiently guarded, endangering his child's life, and that Konoha offered greater protection than other villages. Although Naruto found the explanation irritating, he acknowledged its merit. Naruto sighed, said they would discuss the matter, and closed the door. Obito exhaled in relief. Jiraiya reacted with shocked incredulity at the revelation that Naruto had children. Naruto confirmed that there were 3 grandchildren, and Kushina was even more surprised than she had expected. She thought that she was a grandmother and had not even known it. The realization brought a swirl of complicated emotions, a bit of happiness at the thought of grandchildren, but also the reminder of her strained relationship with their father. Naruto suggested they wait by the trees, confident it would take a while, and the others agreed. Naruto announced that he would go with the children while Haku insisted that he and Haku would stay behind. Haku argued that they could not remain where they were, because doing so would put the children at risk. Kushina offered a compromise, saying they could place the children somewhere secure and that she did not want old wounds reopened. Naruto, serious and resolute, made it clear that Kushina and the children were his main priority and that the matter was not up for debate. Kushina, uneasy about being placed above Naruto, reacted sadly when Naruto affirmed his position. He responded with a brief, affectionate kiss and a warm smile, and Kushina softened. They agreed to proceed, embraced, and Naruto told Kushina to prepare their things. Kushina laughed at the small domesticity of the moment and, with a playful smile, promised there would be more time later. Naruto expressed disbelief and a bittersweet sadness at the idea of becoming an aunt, imagining the ways they might have spoiled the children if circumstances had been different. Menma agreed, while Kushina fought the urge to rush in and see the babies. Fortunately, she managed to hold herself back better than Tsunade, who made her way toward the house to see them. Before Tsunade could enter, Naruto opened the door and intercepted her. Tsunade was surprised at not being able to sense him, and Naruto closed the door behind her with a measured firmness. He then informed the approaching Konoha group that Haku would finish packing soon and that they could go have a meal and return later. Naruto teleported to Zabuza's house briefly to explain that they would be traveling to Konoha and perhaps share some sake, then returned. Rin admitted that the exchange had been tense and clung to her boyfriend for reassurance. Orochimaru remarked on how intimidating Naruto could be, and Jiraiya reported that he had notified Minato. Minato had assigned Shizune the task of finding a suitable house for a family of 5. The group realized Tsunade had stepped away and the door to the house was open. Kushina hurried inside with the twins following. Menma hushed the others and warned that entering might be a bad idea, but Kushina insisted it would be only a quick look. Haku immediately sensed their chakra when they crossed the threshold and thought that he would deal with them if they stepped out of line, a promise of firm protection rather than violence. Kushina focused on picking a kimono for the babies, lost in the softness of the moment. Naruko said she sensed the baby's chakra nearby, much to Menma's dismay because they had agreed to keep their distance. The trio followed Kushina into a room and found a crib with the infants asleep and cuddled together. Kushina, Naruko, and Tsunade cooed at their cuteness, moved by the sight. Kushina whispered that the babies were adorable, and Menma stepped forward to set a boundary, telling them to leave before they drew attention. The babies began to cry, and the adults scrambled to calm them, each aware of the line they had crossed. Haku remained watchful. Rather than threatening harm, he made it clear he would respond firmly if they caused trouble. An older woman stepped into the doorway, unimpressed with the intrusion. She picked up the babies and reminded them not to trespass into someone else's home. The group breathed a collective sigh of relief when she left carrying the infants. Naruto glared at the women for their embarrassment, and Tsunade laughed, noting that the situation had gone better than feared. Rin asked how things had gone, and Sasuke admitted the visit had not gone smoothly, which caused nervous laughter among the group. After an hour, Haku emerged carrying a large scroll. Naruto reappeared nearby, took the scroll, and exchanged a brief, affectionate gesture with Haku before urging everyone to press on. The Konoha ninjas nodded and began their journey out of the village. On the road, Kiba called out to Naruto, trying to strike up conversation. Naruto, preferring to keep to himself, answered tersely that he had been enjoying his peace. The children cooed and added lightness to the mood, and some in the group suggested stopping at a barbecue house along the way. A few joked about baby menus, but Choji's comment met a resigned grunt. The group accepted that Naruto and his family might have to readjust to life in Konoha, and Kakashi expressed understanding for Naruto's need for time. Hinata sat close to Naruto and Haku, trying to comfort herself by staying near them. Niji observed Hinata and wondered quietly if it was possible to feel both happiness for Naruto and sadness at the change. Naruto, absorbed in his own thoughts, paid little attention. Haku, hearing Hinata's concern, felt a twinge of pity but recognized they had chosen the path they were on and would accept the consequences. The group stopped beneath a large tree to rest. Hinata began to cry as the weight of the situation hit her. Tenten noticed that Hinata was not taking the news well and, along with Sakura, moved to offer quiet comfort. Tenten soothed her gently, offering the calm presence her friends needed in that moment. Ino insisted that there were plenty of fish in the sea, but she cried harder. Hinata broke down and asked if it was wrong to wish she were Haku, to wish she were the one standing at his side instead of someone else. She admitted she was envious of Haku, who seemed to be the center of his attention whenever the babies were not around. Naruto hesitated, conflicted about how to answer. Sakura stepped between them and asked what Naruto knew. Naruto explained that the couple had been together since the Chunin exams, which surprised Sakura. They returned to where Hinata was calming down. Naruto told everyone it was time to move. She had heard their father was back and waiting for them. The group nodded and began to run, soon catching up with the others. Niji checked on Hinata and asked if she was better. She nodded. Jiraiya called out to Naruto by a nickname, prompting an exasperated sigh from him. Jiraiya asked how Naruto had managed to fake his own death, drawing the attention of the group. Naruto replied that there were many things he could do and kept his answer deliberately vague. Naruto and Haku then jumped ahead, drawing a sarcastic remark from Tenten about how Haku seemed to be warming to them. The group finally reached the Fire Country and calculated they would reach Konoha in 2 hours. Naruto admitted he had not been this close to that village since the attack and that the thought made his stomach turn. Haku grinned and teased him to embrace the choice he had made. Naruto mockingly demanded support instead of laughter, then leveled a mock glare and teased back. Haku played along with a dramatic confession about possessing someone and claiming to be an ancient demon who came to kill him, which made Naruto laugh. He picked up Raiden and Hitsuguya as the 3 babies watched their mother and seemed to be enjoying themselves. Haku finished with a light-hearted declaration that the babies had lifted an evil curse and that they lived happily ever after, and she gave Naruto a brief, tender gesture before he tickled the babies. Tenten commented on what good parents they made while watching the family amuse their children. The others glanced at Hinata and noted the lingering pain on her face. Niji was relieved they were already 1.5 miles away from the village, and soon they saw signs that they were approaching Konoha. Menma accelerated to catch up with Naruto and addressed Haku, asking to speak with Naruto in private. Haku raised an eyebrow as Naruto and Menma dropped back. Menma confronted Naruto, asking why he had saved him. Naruto pretended ignorance, but Menma pressed, saying he could sense lies. Naruto allowed that he had saved Menma out of pity, calling it his final gift as a brother or perhaps a foolish decision now that they no longer related to each other. The admission quieted Menma, and Naruto suggested they walk together. They arrived at the main gates to find others waiting. Minato was surprised to see Haku as Naruto's partner and that they had children. Minato formally welcomed Ryujin-sama and expressed gratitude for the help to Konoha's security. Naruto stood before Minato and held his gaze until Minato looked away. Naruto warned that his return should not be mistaken for kindness. He said he would come back for his family even if it meant confronting Minato to keep them safe. He commanded Shizune to show them their temporary housing and urged that they pack quickly. Once inside, Minato let out a shaky breath. Kakashi asked if he was all right, and Minato assured him he would be fine before departing. Jiraiya suggested the others go home to rest. Rin agreed, and several of them left. Jiraiya tried to lighten the mood by asking whether the kids or the parents were taking things harder, but Tsunade sharply rebuked him for joking about such matters. Morning came, and Haku woke slowly. He greeted Naruto and mentioned a strange dream about being back in Konoha, then realized they were not in the same bed as before. Haku offered to tell him the details, and Naruto groaned with frustration, trying to steady himself. They decided to make tea before attending to the children. Naruto asked Haku how his mood was. Haku took a sip and replied with dry sarcasm that being back in the place that had hurt him put him in an excellent mood. Haku poured more tea and offered quiet comfort as Naruto sighed. They enjoyed a moment of peace until a knock sounded at the door. Haku announced dramatically that the Hokage wanted an audience with his estranged son and opened the door to find Minato standing there. Naruto turned and gave Minato a cold look that made Minato flinch inwardly. Kushina arrived with Minato and asked to talk, but Naruto responded with anger and bitterness. He accused them of believing the worst about him, of allowing rumors to dictate their decisions, and of failing him by focusing on a prophecy while abandoning him. He told them that if they had been responsible, they would have protected him instead of leaving him isolated, and now their belated guilt could not repair the bond that had long been broken. He shouted that she should not claim to want to clear things up, accusing her of seeking pity and saying that perhaps in another life she would care for her whole family instead of abandoning her son for others, and then slammed the door in their faces. Haku asked if she was okay as he took a deep breath. He said he would wake the children, which made her understand he was not in the mood to talk. She said she would get the ingredients for lunch, and he waved her off. She left, and the others were still there preparing to go. Kushina asked after Naruto, but Haku ignored them and walked past, close enough that Kushina reached out to stop her. Kushina, her mind racing with questions about how Naruto had been, what he had done in the past few years, and where the wedding had been, asked where Haku was going. Haku narrowed her eyes at Kushina's calculating gaze and said she was going to get food for lunch and dinner. Kushina offered to help. Haku turned toward her, causing Kushina to stutter and Minato to flinch. Minato thought Haku reminded him of a younger Kushina and felt uneasy at the memory of being glared at for helping someone with groceries. Kushina stumbled over her words while offering to show Haku the best places, fidgeting under Haku's piercing stare and expecting a cold rejection. After what felt like an eternity of ice-cold eye contact, Haku agreed as long as the ingredients were good quality. A tense silence followed until an Umbu informed Minato that another Kage needed to discuss plans for the upcoming war, prompting him to curse his luck. Minato said he was on his way and teleported to the Kage office, while Haku began walking to the market with Kushina following. Minato thought sadly that if things had not gone so wrong, this would have been normal. Kushina asked what ingredients Haku required. Haku listed beef, herbs, spices, flour and some sweets. Kushina said the market had excellent herbs she had used successfully in many meals and led Haku to a stall. The stall owner greeted Kushina warmly and became flustered at the sight of such a distinguished customer, but composed himself and offered a polite greeting to Haku. Kushina corrected him with her married name, which surprised him. He fetched a crate of herbs and boasted about their freshness. Haku inspected the herbs closely, leaning forward to get a better look. The stall owner tried to remain professional despite his obvious surprise. Haku concluded the herbs were adequate and selected the specific varieties she needed. Kushina reached for her pouch to pay, but Haku stopped her and questioned the gesture. Kushina, awkward and insistent, said she should pay and completed the purchase. She sealed the herbs and left, with Haku following shortly after. Naruto, accompanied by Sakura and Ino, greeted her mother and noticed Haku's presence. Naruto acknowledged Haku and impatiently reminded Kushina that she had been waiting. Kushina said she was coming. Haku sighed at Kushina's distractedness, and the girls hesitated before offering to help. Kushina invited them to join, surprising the girls. Haku interrupted to say she just wanted to finish her list, then nodded for them to come along. They joined the small group. The girls suggested shops and made light conversation as they walked. Naruto asked Haku how Konoha was, which earned an annoyed reaction. Haku replied that it was adequate and appeared bored and distant, clearly uncomfortable in the place that had caused her husband so much pain. Inside Haku's mind, Kurama questioned whether she really expected to enjoy this place. Haku sighed inwardly and admitted she did not. She wanted her brother back but did not know how to connect with him, knowing he would likely shut them down at the first attempt. Kurama suggested using Haku's connection with the woman as a way to reach him, arguing they would have a higher chance of success that way. Haku rejected the idea, certain the woman would not accept them. Kurama then proposed approaching the children instead. Haku reacted with alarm at the thought that Naruto would be furious if they got close to his family. Kurama suggested mentioning the plan to Haku, reasoning she would likely accept free help and supplies. Haku asked why Kurama would want to help, and Kurama yawned and reminded her that they had been responsible for bringing about Naruto's end in battle. Haku reflected that Naruto's hatred for the village was understandable, the trial had been unjust, and the true betrayal had been that no one believed him. She chastised herself for failing to help, slapping her palm against her forehead as she came back to the present. Naruto offered to babysit for free, raising an eyebrow as she did. Kushina, Ino, and Sakura reacted with visible shock at the sudden offer. Naruto explained that she wanted to repair her relationship with her brother and would help in any way she could, staring with cold determination. Kushina questioned why Naruto would try to mend a relationship she had once ended so violently. Naruto insisted that their betrayal had not been in ending his life but in refusing to believe him. She had failed, she acknowledged, but she was determined to believe they could make amends. After a long, tense silence, Haku sighed and agreed. She explained that their anniversary was approaching and they had no reliable babysitter. They usually used clones or her parents, but chakra had to be conserved for the war. Haku asked Naruto to come by next week and take the children in Mizu, resigned to the idea that Naruto would find a way to wear her down. Naruto brightened at the answer while Kushina remained stunned. Haku left afterward, giving the women a few private moments. Later, Haku returned home to find Naruto napping with the children and sighed at the chaos of living with 4 little ones. She moved into the kitchen to prepare lunch, unsealing a scroll and grinding herbs into a fine powder. She hummed a gentle tune as she tenderized and seasoned the oxtail, chopped vegetables with practiced hands, and stirred a warming soup. When the oil reached the right temperature, she fried the oxtail, adding seasoning. The aroma drifted through the house and roused Naruto from his nap. Inhaled deeply, captivated by the scent, and his chest tightened at the sight of Haku in an apron. He felt an intense fear at the thought of losing her, a quiet, private thought he kept to himself as she continued her work. Naruto sat down quietly and asked if there was room for him at the table. Haku squealed in surprise and then playfully scolded her husband for not telling her something earlier, though she could not hide a smile. He remained in a childlike mood, asking again if there would be more for him, and she nodded, amused by his perennial innocence. He admitted that after some playtime and a nap, he felt capable of handling the children as long as no one else interfered. Haku broached the topic of their anniversary and mentioned that, because they needed to conserve chakra and her parents were occupied with war preparations, she had decided to hire a babysitter. Naruto registered the news and asked which Mizu ninja would come to help, only to watch Haku grow slightly uneasy as she set plates and bowls on the table. Haku revealed that no Mizu ninja would be available for 2 months and confessed that Naruto had insisted on helping. Naruto reacted with dismay, striking his forehead with his hand as the babies stirred awake. He begged for someone like Tenten or Irika, and Haku tried to reassure him by framing the arrangement more optimistically. He would have the Hokage's child watching their children. They agreed to change their plans and set a date night for Konoha the following evening, then began to eat together. Later, Naruto called for Menma, and both Menma and Minato hurried downstairs to find Kushina and Naruto beaming. The women explained the babysitting arrangement, leaving the men surprised. Menma asked when the babysitting would start, and Naruto admitted she had not specified a date beyond saying it would be soon. Menma sighed at her carelessness, and Kushina, eyes alight with a renewed spark, reminded them it was time to prepare dinner. Minato advised patience and time as the only way to rebuild trust, and the family settled to eat, hopeful that one day things might be whole again. At the Hyuga household, Hinata sat alone in her room clutching a red scarf, whispering an apology with tear-streaked eyes. Hanabi entered and wrapped her arms around her older sister to offer comfort. When Hinata calmed, Hanabi noticed the scarf and urged her to let it go. That man did not deserve to be remembered, Hinata muttered, and the thought seemed to weigh on her. Hanabi intervened, telling her that it was time to let go of the past and its decisions and focus on the future. Hinata stood, placed the scarf in a small box, and handed it to Hanabi. Hanabi smiled kindly and told her that she was right and that it was time to move forward. Hinata took the box and left, wishing her older sister a good night as she closed the door. When Hanabi saw their father, she told him that Hinata was better now and asked what to do with the scarf. Their father sighed and suggested putting it in storage, noting that it had taken months to make and it was not their place to dispose of it, even if it had been made for someone contemptible. Hanabi nodded and left to attend to her duties. Later, he thought about arrangements to meet the Ryujin man Minato had brought, considering whether they could convince him to become a citizen of Konoha to bolster their strength long-term, and then went to his office. Early one morning, Naruto and Haku prepared in nice kimonos. Naruto finished tying his belt and told Haku that he was ready. Haku wore a beautiful blue kimono with light makeup and a crescent moon necklace. She felt a little embarrassed, confessing that she had not worn makeup in a long time. Naruto, captivated, told her she looked stunning and immediately noticed a shadow of sadness on her face. He asked what was wrong, and Haku admitted that she did not feel as pretty or as caring as others and wondered why he had chosen her when he could have any woman he wanted. Naruto acknowledged that he could be with anyone, but he explained that she was the only one he needed. He reflected that she understood the darkness of solitude better than anyone he knew and had been his light in a dark, lonely time. He told her that she had become his rock and that he had always needed her. Haku was surprised and moved. Naruto took her hands and reassured her that there was nothing to worry about. Her doubts eased and she began to cry, comforted by his steady presence. Haku then noticed that she had smudged makeup on Naruto's kimono and apologized. Naruto suggested that she drop the garments off at the Hokage's home while he took care of other matters, and Haku nodded, removed her makeup, and dressed casually. She packed toys with written instructions for her children. Mikasa toddled to Haku and clung to the fabric of her kimono, calling for her. Haku picked her up, placed her on the table, and soothed her with the same comforting phrase Naruto had used earlier. Haku smiled warmly and thanked the little girl for responding so sweetly. Haku glanced over at her brothers and saw Raiden perched playfully on top of Hitsuguya. Their childish antics made her both amused and exasperated. She caught Mikasa as she slipped, and the babies laughed and continued their play. Packing finished, Haku made a clone to carry Mikasa and Hitsuguya. Ryujin held onto her finger with a determined grip that left a visible mark, and when Raiden surprised her by nibbling her finger, she squealed and reminded him that he was not food. Raiden looked puzzled, and Haku forgave him with a sigh, then took his hand and led the children toward the Hokage's home. As she walked, several men attempted to speak to her and flirt, but Haku ignored them, stating that she was married. One man persisted and grabbed the back of her kimono. Haku turned and saw that it was an Uchiha who had unsheathed a sword. The civilians around them gasped and tension mounted as the Uchiha activated his Sharingan and glared. Haku suggested that they not involve her children in a childish response to rejection and proposed saving the matter for another time. The man stiffened, and Haku released a quiet, cool burst of chakra that startled him. She warned him that next time he should not play with fire, and the village went silent at the force of her calm warning. Sakura and other members of the Konoha 13 arrived and called out to Haku, and the Uchiha, intimidated by Haku's glare, addressed Lord Sasuke with fear. Haku noted that the man's father would be hearing about the incident, and then she turned on her heel. Raiden grabbed at her kimono to get her attention, and she moved his small hand to her finger, making him laugh while the clones played with the other two children. Sakura admired how good a mother Haku was as Haku continued walking toward Menma and Naruko's home. Sakura asked why Haku was headed there. Haku knocked on the door and Naruko and Menma came out to help by taking the kids and gathering 2 scrolls before they returned inside. The others were surprised and asked if they were babysitting Haku's children, then watched as Haku moved so quickly that she vanished from sight, a speed that even Sasuke found shocking. Kiba suggested they go help, and Niji asked Hinata if she was sure she could manage. Hinata nodded nervously and agreed to try. They hurried to knock on the house. Naruko opened the door slightly and was surprised to see her friends on the doorstep. The woman apologized nervously that they could not hang out today because they were helping a friend. Shikamaru rolled his eyes. Shikamaru then remarked that Naruto was hardly her friend, and his comment made her flinch. Sakura smiled and asked if they understood. The group explained that they had seen Haku hand her children to the woman while they had been on their way to visit. The woman laughed nervously and opened the door wider to reveal a chaotic scene. Raiden held a table suspended in the air while Menma tried to pry it from him. Hitsuguya waddled, each footstep freezing the ground, and Kushina used adamantine chains to keep him contained. Mikasa laughed from atop a table and, when she slipped, teleported to a corner where Minato appeared to catch her.